on Veterans and Federal Affairs for the 7th public hearing of the 2023-2024 legislative session. My name is John Vilas, and I am the Senate Chair of the committee, and I'm joined by my colleague, Chair Cassidy. Before we get going, I just want to begin by pausing for a second. I think it's really, really important that we on this committee in particular remember it is why we do what we do, which is advocacy for veterans. And every now and again, something happens that reminds you of what that service and what that sacrifice entails. And sometimes that hits really, really close to home, like we are finding out today and yesterday in my hometown of Westfield, Massachusetts. So if you'll allow me, on the night of January 11th, 2 Navy SEALs were on a small Navy aircraft that was set to board a boat suspected of carrying Iranian-made missile parts of the Houthi militants in Yemen. When one of the SEALs fell in rough waters during the mission, a second SEAL immediately followed protocol and dove in the water in a rescue attempt. On Sunday, U.S. Central Command announced the end of an exhaustive 10-day search and rescue operation to look for the 2 missing SEALs. The military is now still conducting recovery operations for the 2 service members. One of them, Chris Chambers, went to Westfield High School, my hometown. And as I had heard about these missing SEALs a week and a half ago. And last night when I was just sitting around watching TV at the end of the day with my wife and my son, a text message came in and I could see my wife's face. She went to school with Chris and was on the same swim team as him. And hearing some of the stories, the humanity, the type of person he was, we lost a good one. You know, a lot of times when we hear about our service members and when they lose their lives or are hurt, a lot of times we hear it on the news and it's distant and it's far. This one wasn't. So I just want to begin today by recognizing that sacrifice, recognizing that it's hit Westfield, Massachusetts, and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And I'd ask folks right now to join me in a moment of silence for the 2 Navy SEALs and their families. Thank you very much. At this point, if you're, actually I'm going to turn it over to Chair Cassidy at this point in time for some opening remarks.
Very, very, very sorry for your loss for Massachusetts and Westfield, your friend. We do have some colleagues who are here on the committee, Rep. Zaros and Rep. Pease, Rep. Ted Phillips, Rep. Arriaga, and virtually is Rodney Elliott. I just want to thank you very much for, before we testify on this is just been wonderful to have Secretary Santiago here, and he's a good find. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd now like to recognize the Senate members of this committee, starting with my good friend, the Vice Chair, Mike Rush, Senator Brady, Senator Mark, and Senator Fatman. And I would now like to ask those able to stand and join in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Just very briefly, a few housekeeping details before we get started. This is a hybrid hearing with participation both in person and virtually. Testimony will be limited to 3 minutes per person. As is customary, the committee may take elected officials out of turn to testify as they arrive. If you are here today in person and have not yet registered to testify, you may do so by filling out the sign-in sheet with committee staff at the back of the hearing room. Written testimony will also continue to be accepted by the committee and can be submitted via email. For members of the committee participating virtually, if you have a question, please use the raised hand feature on Teams or communicate via the chat committee staff. Now, today's hearing focused on H4172, an act honoring, empowering, and recognizing our service members and veterans, otherwise known as the HERO Act, which was filed by Governor Healy, and who we will be hearing testimony from today, as well as several other bills. Now, before I turn it over, I just want to mention, Governor and Mr. Secretary, it has been an absolute honor to work with you on this topic. We've talked about it frequently, Governor. One of the first thing you said when you were elected, when you were sworn in, was recognizing the service of veterans, their families, and that's not lost on anyone in this committee. And Secretary Santiago, it has been an absolute joy to work with you, and we are humbled for this continued collaboration, as evidenced by the bill that you were about to testify on. So without further ado, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chairman Vilas. Thank you, Chair Cassidy. Thank you to members of the committee for inviting us to testify here today. Thank you for an extensive amount of work and collaboration and discussions over the last many months since we took office. I'm very proud to be sitting alongside one of your own in Secretary John Santiago, who has done incredible things in just his short tenure these last several months, and is looking forward to working in partnership, as am I, on things that we can do together to make sure that our veterans, service members, and their families get the very, very best from all of us. I am sorry to once again have had communications with you, Chair Vilas, about someone from Massachusetts, another fallen hero. Unbelievable. And it just seems like this year we've seen and experienced a lot of heartache. I'm always heartened by the fact, though, that here in Massachusetts, there are policymakers, including many who wore the uniform, who understand, and that is infused through your policy work that you engage in and day out. It's also heartening to know that we look out at the Gold Star families and so many military families who we know will be there to support those families as they join a most unfortunate club. And I think it is ever more incumbent upon us, and the best way to honor a hero like Chris Chambers is to make sure we are putting forward the very best in terms of what we can do. So our hearts go out to Chris Chambers' family, to all in the Western Mass community, and the Westfield community, and the broader community. All who serve are special, the Navy SEAL community, for this really, really tragic loss in the line of duty. We're here today to talk about the HERO Act, and we think it is aptly named, honoring, empowering, and recognizing our service members and veterans. And that's what the HERO Act does. This legislation is grounded in close collaboration across my administration, drawing on a number of secretariats, also working closely with members of the legislature and our veteran community. On March 1st of last year, our administration was able to establish the Executive Office of Veterans Services. Thank you, as that was through an act of the legislature. Thank you for your leadership, Mr. Chair. We were proud to appoint as its first secretary John Santiago, a major in the U.S. Army Reserves and a former member of this legislature, as I mentioned. The mission of our executive office is to reaffirm our commitment to veterans and provide increased oversight, accountability, and professionalism across all the many ways that we serve them. This work is bolstered by a 7% increase for veterans in the FY24 budget. Thank you once again. We also secured federal benefits to enhance our 2 veterans' homes. Already, we've broken ground on a world-class long-term care facility in Holyoke and began moving veterans into the new state-of-the-art community living center in Chelsea. That was a sad, tragic, terrible chapter in our state's history. And I am proud of the work that was done to re-envision and reimagine both of these homes that provide care and living and housing in a setting that befits the honor of their service. In addition, we established the Veterans Equality Review Board to ensure veterans unfairly discharged based on past discriminatory federal policies can get the benefits they earned. And we established the Governor's Advisory Council on Veteran Services, including the Women Veterans Advisory Committee Chair. Each of these historic steps, as I mentioned, was made possible because of the leadership of you all and your colleagues, and we are grateful for that. Secretary Santiago will speak in a moment. I know he's put a real focus on community outreach, on engagement, finding out where the needs are, where the gaps are, and how we can best deliver. And that's what this legislation represents. It does a few things. One is making sure that we're expanding benefits, modernizing services to meet the moment that we're in, and looking to reach more veterans and families. It takes an important stand for mental health, which we know we've seen a disproportionate impact on our military community, recognizing the need for enhanced health care and addressing the hidden wounds that have afflicted our veterans disproportionately. It also makes Massachusetts more affordable for veterans. You know, that's something that we've worked on, affordability generally. We want to make sure that applies to our veteran community as well. Increases the disabled veteran annuity, putting money back in the pockets of those who've selflessly served our country. It invests in pathways and good careers and supports small businesses by increasing the veterans' higher tax credit and expanding access to the active duty service buyback program. Finally, it enables us to reach more veterans and recognize the full diversity of this Commonwealth. It would broaden the 115 definition of a veteran, aligning it with federal standards, which will better allow more Massachusetts veterans to be eligible for a range of state benefits. Every day, I am inspired by the role that veterans have played in forging our state's identity and legacy. When I took office, I was sworn in on the Bible from my grandmother, who was receiving it from her grandmother. My great-great-grandfather served in the Civil War, great. And I did that intentionally. It means something to me. I'm proud to be able to serve with all of you in Massachusetts, home to the American Revolution, birthplace of the National Guard, birthplace of the Navy. We claim some of the Army as well. Fight over that. Well, I claim it. And our state's leadership, all we've been able to do as a great Commonwealth, was only made possible because of the service and the sacrifice of the men and women who served and of their families. So today, in putting forward this HERO Act, it's an opportunity to honor that. And with that, I urge the committee to report the HERO Act favorably. More importantly, we look forward to working with you, answering questions. We want to get this right. I thank you for your time. I thank you for your service.
Thank you, Governor. Chair Vilas, Chair Cassidy, members of the committee, I appreciate the opportunity to be here today and address you and discuss the HERO Act. And I'm particularly grateful for our shared commitment to serve our veterans. Many of you on the dais have served, or are family members of those who have served. And for that, we in the administration are very grateful and thank you for your sacrifices. As Secretary, I'm proud to be part of the positive change that the Healey-Driscoll administration is bringing to our veterans. Not only has Governor Healey and Lieutenant Governor Driscoll prioritized our commitment to veterans, but we're leading with action and not just words. Now, you just heard the governor state what we've been up to this past year as we embarked on a mission to turn around this once beleaguered agency. And while it's been a busy year setting up this new secretariat, we didn't lose sight of the need to comprehensively reinvigorate veteran services, to expand them, to modernize them, and to make sure that we were being inclusive. But the journey to get us here today, where we're testifying on the most comprehensive piece of veterans legislation filed by a governor in almost 2 decades, started very early in our tenure. And a primary focus has been on outreach and engagement. To get us here today, we met and collaborated with many veteran service officers representing over 100 municipalities. We engaged over 30 nonprofit partners, and we conducted a comprehensive review, 50-state review, of veteran legislative efforts across the entire country. Now, what's the outcome? The HERO Act, a transformative piece of legislation that represents a significant leap forward for veteran services in Massachusetts. Now, from a 10,000-foot view, the HERO Act consists of 17 proposals that address 3 key objectives: expanding benefits, modernizing them, and reaching more veterans to provide the support that they receive, that they deserve. In addition to the proposals Governor Healy just laid out, the legislation puts money back into the pockets of veterans and their families by increasing benefits like the disabled veteran annuity, something I know many of you have independently filed as legislators. As it stands today, eligible disabled veterans get a yearly benefit of $2,000. Now, this benefit serves 17,000 veterans and Gold Star families, but the last time the annuity was increased was back in 2006, 17 years ago. The HERO Act changes that. It increases it to $2,500. Now, when it comes to our other major veteran program, Chapter 115, which is a needs-based financial assistance program serving over 5,000 veterans, there's more to do. Enacted over 100 years ago, no other state in the country offers such a unique financial benefit. Chapter 115 provides cash assistance and can pay for things like housing and medical care. But the catch? It hasn't been significantly updated in decades, and it's time to bring it into the 21st century. For starters, Chapter 115 does not reimburse veterans for outpatient behavioral health costs. The HERO Act will change that by explicitly allowing these costs to be covered, something I know we all care about. But that's not it for Chapter 115. The HERO Act also broadens the definition of a veteran to more closely align with the federal VA definition. Right now, there is confusion amongst veterans, amongst myself and colleagues sometimes. I know Representative Peace is a longtime Army guy. I'm sure that definition's gotten to you a couple times as well. But the differences between the state and federal definitions need to be resolved. What's frustrating to me is that there are many veterans out there who may be receiving federal benefits, but they're not eligible for state veteran benefits due to this definition issue. The HERO Act begins to address this by opening up doors to veterans so that they can receive their benefits. And alongside the administration's goal to make Massachusetts more affordable, more competitive, and more equitable, the HERO Act introduces options for municipalities to enhance veteran property tax exemptions. Now, the current law requires cities and towns to double property tax exemptions for multiple non-veteran populations if they want to double just the veteran property tax exemption, which can be a disincentive. This legislation makes it simpler for municipalities to double the current exemption for veterans only. And if they choose, they can tie that to inflation. The HERO Act also supports many veterans who want to work in government, many of which pursue careers as first responders. It does so by more easily allowing veterans to put their years of military service towards state service. Today, a veteran has 180 days upon joining state government to make that decision, to buy back 4 years of state service. But many of you know, some of you on this panel here, that the transition to civilian life can be challenging. Never mind the fact that enrolling in this program from day one can be quite cost prohibitive. It's not a realistic decision to make within 6 months starting a brand new job. The HERO Act does away with the 180-day deadline, and it's a proposal both the Senate and the House have supported in the past. In conclusion, the provisions we've outlined today are just several of those that put forward by the HERO Act that ultimately speak to the Healy Driscoll administration and our commitment to honorably serve those who served us. And as a fellow veteran myself, I'm proud of what we've been able to accomplish this first year in office. I look forward to partnering with you and our legislative colleagues to make sure that Massachusetts becomes the envy of the nation when it comes to our veterans. It's for these reasons that we urge the committee to report the HERO Act favorably. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thank you, Governor. The first thing that I want to say before I open it up to the committee for questions, I just want to say I appreciate your collaboration. On the eve of filing this right before, just reaching out. Many of the bills obviously are shared priorities, and that willingness to continue this conversation And to really just work together, I think that matters. So I just really want to thank you for that, having spoken to both of you about that. Questions, members of the committee?
Just one question. Thank you very much for filing this, Governor and Secretary. We have a number of the annuities. There's a number of bills coming up, $1,000, $2,000 increase. Just wondering how you came up with the 500. That's my only.
Well, we had many conversations with folks who administer the benefit,
Yeah.
who've been doing this for decades. I mean, in fact, in our office here, led by Evan Macronikolas, I mean, they've been doing this for literally decades. Some are in the audience here today. With their experiences in engaging veterans and talking to folks who receive this benefit, and looking at the variety of bills that were out there put forward by you guys, this is the number that we came up with. We think it's fiscally responsible as well. In fact, the budget is, for all intents and purposes, the bill, for all intents and purposes, is budget neutral. Insofar as much what we're adding, we're also streamlining and making programs more efficient. But we think the fact that the amount has not been increased in 17 years, we think our veterans, particularly those who are 100% service-connected disabled, and our Gold Star families who are deserving of a $500 increase.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Rush.
Just a comment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say thank you for making this such a priority, your administration, Governor, and the Secretary. Over the years, as I formally chair the committee, I was able to, in having conversations, we could say to individuals, we've got some of the best benefits in the Commonwealth, in the entire nation here in the Commonwealth. And it wasn't because the legislature was full of veterans, for sure. Very few veterans have served in the legislature in my time here. But it was because of caring individuals who come to this building and want to make things better for the veterans, the Gold Star families, and all of their families. So that tradition is continuing through this piece of legislation. And I just wanted to sincerely say thank you in making this a priority and keep up the great work. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chairman. Representative Arriaga.
Madam Governor, Mr. Secretary, I want to personally thank you as a legislator, but also as one of your constituents and as a veteran. Every single issue in this HEROES Act, I can personally say I have received phone calls in regards to. So I want to thank you on behalf of all the veterans out here. This means a lot. As you stated clearly in your State of the Union and State of the Commonwealth, there's a lot of work to be done. And the fact that this administration has accepted the challenge and is going to address all of these issues, I'm just honored to be able to work alongside of you. And I'm hopeful that in the near future, we can have at least in the radar. So let me rephrase that, the question. In your radar, in the future, are we going to be looking forward to standardizing the regulations? As you know, every city and town has different regulations as to what constitutes as Chapter 115 benefits and what each city offers. So I was hopeful that the administration can hopefully keep it in their radar to unify that, standardize that, so that regardless of where the veteran resides, that the benefits offered to them will be unified. Thank you.
Yeah, well, let me just say that not in this legislation, but something that we've been actively working on is 115. We are lucky here in Massachusetts that we have over 200 plus veteran service officers, many of which are in the audience today, and I thank them for their service. Not any other state in the country has that, like at all. The fact that we here, every city in town has one, it's important. Now, how do we utilize them, work closely with them? That's something that we're working on a daily basis. And how do we bring Chapter 115, as I said, to the 21st century? We are looking at making things more efficient, streamlining efforts, increasing training for that VSO to make sure that the VSO is prepared and engaged to provide the services. Because they are our connection on the front lines. And as a frontline provider myself, I know how important that is. That's why their perspectives have been engaged from day one. I'm really hearing from them today. Just real quick, on the gentleman on your right there, Senator Rush, I want to thank you for chairing this committee in the past and for all your work, and as a veteran yourself. And I thought about you when we were coming with this bill together. In fact, one of the 17 proposals is the vet hire tax credit that you put forth in 2017. Now, I don't know if you know this, but that bill, that piece of legislation, was never implemented 6 years ago. The thousands of veterans who could have benefited from this, and employers. And I'm looking forward to enacting regulations and passing a robust bill. I just want to take a second to thank you for doing that, putting that bill forward.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Chair Villas. This is an honor for me to be on this committee with these people and to have you, Governor, and you, Secretary, testify in front of us. It's pretty special. This bill, the name is perfect. It should be the HEROES Act. And for you, Senator Vilas, to mention our fallen Navy SEAL, right? That's very emotional for a lot of us. You know, as a Gold Star father, I can imagine what that family is going through. So please use me if you can. This bill touches a lot of the things that we hear about as legislators. I'm so proud to see it come before us. It should be done. It shouldn't take 17 years. So I'm glad you did your homework and boots on the ground. And lastly, I would say we should lead the country because as the governor often says, we're Massachusetts. We started this whole thing right here in this city, and we should lead the nation because that's what we do. Thank you.
Thank you,
Chair.
Representative. Just briefly, the women's veterans, the fastest growing demographic, the behavioral health stuff. These are all, very candidly speaking, these are all issues that we could have done better at as a Commonwealth. And I just think that recognizing that and bringing it forward is absolutely critical. And I want to pay expanding the Veterans Equality Review Board. You know, a veteran is a veteran is a veteran. Period. End of story. Race, religious creed, gender, sexual orientation. A veteran is a veteran is a veteran. And I remember last session when, because my perception of this is that this is a further expansion of what we did with the Don't Ask, Don't Tell. You know, it pains me, you know, many veterans in this room where we would be in a deployed environment, right? And one of the first things to do, as we all know, is you pull out your pictures and you show, this is my husband, my wife, my kid, my best friend, my whomever. And that for so many years, folks couldn't do that, or they could and risk getting kicked out of our military. Last time I checked, we all bleed the same color. And I just think it's really, really important that we recognize that and we bring that forward. So thank you for continuing that great work. And I'm just looking forward to continuing that collaboration. We know we'll be in close contact, so pending any further questions.
Can I just highlight one thing
Please.
about the verb? First of all, thank you for your leadership. I mean, that was your idea, and we were honored to really get that to the finish line. Something that the governor is always talking about, privately or publicly, inclusivity. How we make sure that folks who fought for their country, who served, again, the resources and support that they need. And without getting into specifics here, because I'm not allowed to, I can tell you, since we've implemented the verb, we have received applications, and I have approved some. And so this stuff matters.
Yes.
And fortunately, I think I actually ran some of the verb committee folks who sit on that, and they'll be here to testify. But they're working hard. And we got one of the best compliments from our general counsel the other day when he looked at this commission and what they're doing. They're actively engaged, trying to support our veteran community, particularly those who felt like they didn't get the support that they needed when they were serving. So thank you for your leadership on that, and thank you to the committee for supporting that.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Governor, Mr. Secretary, thank you so very much for your time today.
Thank you again for the opportunity to testify and to work with you. Thank you for your sensitivity, Mr. Chair. You've been there with us throughout the year, and we really appreciate that and the support of all the committee. I'm sorry to you and to Rep. Pease for the latest fallen hero from your community. I also remember it wasn't that long ago standing with Rep. Arriaga as we welcomed the remains of Jake Gallagher back to Massachusetts. That's 2 in just 2 months, which again speaks to Massachusetts and how real this is for our state, and how real and important it is that we make sure we do everything that we can to honor and to take care of those who serve and those who have served. So our administration stands at the ready. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I want to recognize Senator Brady, who has joined us. Thank you, Senator.
Anybody want this seat? I gotta run to another meeting. Yeah, is that all right? And then I'll tell Larry to push this side.
It doesn't look empty yet.
Thank you very much. And Rep Riaz, welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Representative Paracella. Representative, before you testify, I just want to say thank you for your service and your leadership on these issues for so many years. Thank you. Floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Chairman Velas and Chairman Cassidy and committee members. Thank you for taking me out of turn. I really appreciate it. And also, let me just offer my condolences as well to a loss of another hero. And I'm testifying today on H2627, an act relative to veterans buyback. And Senator Velas, you have a companion bill, Senate 1750. As the governor and secretary just testified on the HERO Act, this is one provision of the HERO Act that's included in her bill, but this is also a separate legislation. This would, as you may know, that veterans can buy up to 4 years of military service to be credited toward their pension. So if they serve for 10 years and buy 4 years, they're credited with 14 years of service. But they have to make that decision within 180 days of being hired. So a lot of folks either aren't aware of that or don't think they can make that decision. Are they going to serve for 10 years in state government? So what this simply would do would allow veterans up to 11 years to buy that time. So essentially, you will serve your 10 years, you're vested, then you have another year to buy that time. So at that point in time of the service, they will understand that they've been vested and they can buy this time. There's also a provision here to allow for 1 year upon enactment of this bill for veterans who missed that timeline to buy their service. We've gotten a lot of support in this bill from our public safety community, firefighters, police officers, and others. So I appreciate your consideration in this bill, and I know there's a lot of folks here, so I'll wrap up my testimony with that.
Mr. Chairman, thank you so very much. The other thing I'd point out, too, is that a lot of times when folks make that transition from the military to the civilian life, whatever they're doing, it's just not on their mind. The buyback is just not on their mind at that point in time. This is something they should do. They, in many respects, they kind of feel, all right, I finished this career, now I'm starting this. They're not thinking about the end. But I really, you're right. I do have a companion bill. We've spoken at length about this. The chair and I have talked about this. So just thank you for bringing it forward and continue your advocacy. And thank you again for your service. Questions?
Yes.
Please.
This comes up a lot. And what I've been taught is you try to handle it one at a time. And we shouldn't. It should be handled as a Commonwealth. So I'm glad that you're pushing this. You're the right person. And that there's a look-back period for those that have been waiting. And the most of the veterans that I know that went into, let's say, public safety afterwards, they're not thinking about retirement at the time. So the window passes, and now it's time to retire, and they would love this. So it's very important. And anything we can do to make it go forward to the finish line, we should do.
Yeah, and to your point, I mean, I chaired the Public Service Committee before my current chairmanship, and I also chaired this committee as well. And we would get a lot of bills of individual members trying to do their veteran buyback because they missed it. And as you mentioned, you're a 22-year-old, you get hired as a firefighter, you're not thinking about retirement. So this would alleviate that issue as well by giving, and all the eligible members would have to be notified that they have this opportunity to buy that time. So hopefully this would alleviate that issue and having all these single bills come up before us as well.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Any other questions? Mr. Chairman, thank you so very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Next up, we have Representative Sylvia, who is virtual.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As mentioned so many times already, this is, I filed House 2662. The bill mirrors the language, of course, contained in H. 2627, Chairman Paracella, and Senate Bill 1750, Philip Vilas, as well as the HERO Act filed by Governor Healy. As you all are aware and has been mentioned so many times already in this hearing, the current law calls for public employees to elect to purchase military service time within that initial 180 days of service. Many times, as you just mentioned, Chairman Vilas, new employees are overwhelmed with paperwork and they fail to understand the time constraint. And if passed, this legislation would allow current employees 1 year from enactment a chance to purchase their creditable service time. And we feel that this would give our veterans who proudly serve the time to decide and the recognition that they deserve. Thank you all so very much. I'm so happy that we're moving forward. I filed this on behalf of our local veterans associations and Massachusetts Police Association. Thank you all.
Representative, thank you very much. Questions? Seeing none, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Representative McGregor, who is virtual.
Good afternoon. Sorry I can't be there in person. I'm having a little car trouble. But good afternoon, Chair Cassidy, Chair Vilas, and the honorable members of the committee. Thank you guys for taking me out of turn. I'm here to speak in support of H4172, the HERO Act. I'd like to first thank the Governor, Lieutenant Governor, and Secretary Santiago for their hard work and dedication on behalf of the Commonwealth's veterans and their families. Thanks to Governor Healy and her administration, we in the legislature now have the opportunity to pass the most expansive and comprehensive veterans bill in 20 years. I think we all know and can agree that that's far too long, and I'm excited about the chance to meet this moment and deliver for our Commonwealth's veterans. I want to echo the comments made before me that these 17 policy initiatives proposed in the HERO Act will make major strides for the mental, physical, and financial wellness of our veterans across the Commonwealth. As the state representative for the 10th Suffolk District, I would be remiss without mentioning how beneficial expanding access to behavioral health treatment, expanding supports for our disabled vets, supporting the businesses that hire our veterans, and the other key components of this bill will be for over 19,000 veterans living in Suffolk County. But for me, this bill goes beyond my responsibilities as a state representative. I come from a family of veterans. My father is an Army vet. My Aunt Sharon is an Air Force veteran. My Uncle Bill was a Navy pilot, and my Uncle George was a colonel in the Air Force. So today I speak not just for the residents of the 10th Suffolk, but for the veterans close to me that served their country and the Commonwealth valiantly. And also I am a constituent of Senator Rush, so appreciate his service and everyone else's service as well. For all these reasons and more, H4172 has my full support, and I ask that the committee to report it out favorably. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Questions? Seeing none, thank you very much, Representative.
Thank you.
Next up, we have the Honorable Matthew Machera, First Justice of the Chelsea District Court. Your Honor, hopefully I have pronounced your name correctly.
Yeah, right on the button. Thank you so much, Chairman Cassidy, Chairman Vilas, and honorable members of the community. I here representing the Massachusetts Judges Conference, where it's my distinct pleasure to represent judges all across the divisions of our court. I'd like to talk to you today about a gentleman named Jeffrey Clifford, who was raised in Quincy, Massachusetts, and in 1989 joined the United States Marine Corps, where he saw combat in Operation Desert Storm. After 9/11, he re-enlisted, and on March 2026, he deployed to Fallujah, Iraq. Clifford was a vehicle commander of a lead vehicle in his platoon, where he was responsible for navigating his platoon of 8 HMVs and 32 Marines around the city of Fallujah. He patrolled his section, which was called the First Section, along with other Marines called Second Section. They would always stay close to support each other if there was enemy combat. One day during routine patrol, they happened upon a possible insurgent. They followed that man into a courtyard and after interrogating him, cleared 2 houses. Clifford then continued to interrogate the man, and the man said his daughter was sick, and his wife called Clifford and other Marines, including Navy Corpsman Doc Walsh, into the room. At that time, they met baby Miriam. Clifford photographed her, and after the patrol, Doc Walsh provided these photos to the battalion surgeon. Doc Walsh asked the battalion surgeon how he could help her, and the surgeon said she needed surgery for her birth defect that exposed some of her internal organs, or she would eventually die from the infection. The Marines in 1st and 2nd Section, without hesitation, volunteered to go on extra missions in addition to their normally assigned missions in Iraq to make sure that she was treated and did not die of an infection until she could get that operation. Clifford was the platoon navigator. During each of these patrols, Clifford had to find a different approach to the house so that they would not get ambushed or hit with an IED, and they had to ensure that the insurgents did not know the Marines were providing care for baby Miriam, as that would endanger the lives of the family. Clifford would place the vehicles in 1st Section around the perimeter of baby Miriam's house. And the 2nd Section would enter the home where Doc Walsh would care for the child by giving her antibiotics and cleaning her to prevent infection. On September 4th, 2006, Clifford was leading 1st Section on patrol 200 yards north of 2nd Section. The second vehicle in 2nd Section was hit by an IED, instantly killing Doc Walsh, Corporal Jared Shoemaker, Lance Corporal Eric Valdepenas, and severely wounding Lance Corporal Cody Hill, who received 3rd-degree burns over 50% of his body. Clifford heard the explosion and immediately responded by bringing his section to the location, where they arrived within seconds, set up a security perimeter, and saved the life of Lance Corporal Hill. It was Doc Walsh who put the pressure on the battalion to help baby Miriam. She was on a long waiting list to be operated on in the U.S., and there was no guarantee she would get the surgery before she had a bad infection and succumbed to her birth defect. Doc Walsh's sacrifice and the sacrifices of all those Marines doing the extra duty motivated the command to make her surgery a priority. Baby Miriam was flown to the United States, here, to the Massachusetts General Hospital, where she was operated on and made a complete recovery. Jeffrey Clifford is known by another title, Associate Justice of the Massachusetts District Court. I am here in front of you on behalf of the MJC and its members who have served our country. On their behalf, I respectfully request that judges who have served in the military be given the option of every other state worker and be allowed to buy their time back towards their pension. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Your Honor, thank you very much. Just the testimony you offered about service members and their willingness to put themselves in harm's way for the betterment and health and safety of people they've never met and will likely never see again, literally causes chills. So thank you for sharing that, and I just wanted to say that. Questions, members of the committee?
I'd like to take this opportunity to thank everybody that has worn the uniform and everybody that wears the uniform today. I didn't have that honor, but what I can do is respect the memory of everybody they do. So every morning when I greet the jury, and you know, jurors are always happy to be there, I like to remind them that the reason that they're there and they're safe, and the reason that I have the privilege to do what I do, is the sacrifice that everybody in uniform has made. And I personally am deeply, deeply grateful for the work, and I thank all the veterans.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, sir.
Patrick George. Of course, from the Massachusetts Veteran Service Officer Association.
Good afternoon, Chairman Vilas,
Yeah.
Chairman Cassidy, the rest of the members of the committee, both here and online. My name is Patrick George. I'm the president of the Massachusetts Veteran Service Officers Association. Our mission as the MVSOA is to improve the training for our VSOs, which hopefully improves the outcomes, not just for the veterans that we represent, but the VSOs that we also represent. There's a lot to like about the governor's bill, and we are in a room full of subject matter experts on just about every topic of the bill. So I'm going to keep it short and talk about what we can really, what will really affect our day-to-day, which is our ability to reimburse veterans for behavioral health appointments. A report that was recently submitted to the House and Senate clerks on the Veterans Reintegration Committee places an emphasis on VSOs receiving mental health training and how to identify markers when we first meet these veterans that are just getting out. And a huge barrier that we see right now is our ability to reimburse for copays. is a behavioral health, element. Mental health is physical health, and so our ability to reimburse for copays ensures that a veteran who is on Chapter 115 doesn't have to choose between paying a copay and buying groceries for that week. And so we look forward to working with the committee as the legislative process goes through. We appreciate the administration taking their time to work with us as well and hearing us out for the things that are in this bill, to include tying property tax abatements to the CPI, just to sort of make the dollar worth what it is today, what it will be tomorrow. And we're happy to answer any questions and look forward to working with the committee as the legislative process goes through.
Thank you. Questions from the committee? Just a big thank you for everything you do on this issue and many others. We always know where to find you. You always weigh in on so many different issues for our veterans and their families. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Senator.
Next up, Peggy Griffin from the Greater Boston Chapter of the Gold Star Wives of America. Welcome.
Thank you. Committee chairs to the committee, thank you so much for this opportunity today. I'm Peggy Griffin. I'm president of the Greater Boston Chapter for Gold Star Wives of America. While I'm representing the Gold Star Wives, the Greater Boston Chapter today, I also hold the position of regional parliamentarian and the national chair of the board of directors for the national organization. For 79 years, Gold Star Wives of America has been the only national organization to represent widows and widowers who have lost their spouse due to their military service. Our members are from all eras. Congress recognized our organization as a unique organization in 1980 and designated us as with a congressional charter as a National Veteran Service Organization. We are the only congressionally chartered organization of this kind. The Greater Boston Chapter is the second oldest chapter in the country. So we've been around for a while. We provide support, benefit information, and volunteer organizations. Our members lose their social standing, their economic standing, and their community standing. And so we work to help people regain their life. We actually had several board members at a recent meeting say how much that this organization has meant to them, and one said that it had literally saved her life. So our members tell us when they lose their spouse, they've lost 75% or more of their income. And so we're here to speak to the increase on the annuity, how important it is. Without an increase over 17 years, the value of the annuity has been lost to some degree. And we are the only place in the country that I know of that offers this benefit. And we are very grateful for it, but definitely an increase is very helpful to our members as they rely on it each year. This bill also, some of our challenges as a VSO in helping our members and others is you have a lot of eligibility criteria, nomenclature that is not well defined or understood, and uncoordinated benefits. So sometimes for those who should be served are not served because it appears they do not qualify. So it's important that we keep coordination in mind when we're looking at legislative programs and packages, as the governor has done here. Seamless and coordinated services that are delivered easily can help in reaching those in needs more quickly, especially when we start talking about veterans with mental health issues. Gold Star Wives members, we know this firsthand. For our members who supported their spouse during their time of illness or care through the state and or VA systems, we know how hard it is to get the help that our loved one needed, and sometimes that help wasn't there. So filing a full package that updates standards and language, we know it's not glamorous, but we know it's needed to address these issues and identify any service gaps that remain. For members of our chapter, we've seen the struggles of veterans in the community, both through our service projects and our own personal experience. We support any efforts such as increased access to medical and financial services as prepared to help veterans reach that care and help to repay the debt that can never be repaid to those that served. Property tax abatements remain a challenge for our members and for veterans across the state. The provisions in this bill begin to address this, and including the CPI adjustment makes a lot of sense and makes it a lot easier to administer. So thank you again for the chance to be here, to speak in support of our veterans, military families, and Gold Star families. We're honored to be a part of keeping Massachusetts in the forefront in benefits for our veterans' families and survivors. Thank you.
Ms. Griffith, thank you so much for your testimony. You are always weighing in on issues that are so very critical. We are thankful for that. Our Gold Star families are literally our nation's most treasured assets. So thank you, all of you. And questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Next up, we have Rob Abbott.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I became a Gold Star mother on July 6, 2017, when my only child, United States Army Specialist Jason John Welch, was deployed to heaven. He didn't die on a battlefield, but rather he died from hidden wounds that he suffered as a result of battle. There was no knock on the door, no military personnel, and no veteran service officer to deliver the news or provide guidance. Instead, it was me, my sister, and Jay's wife, Cynthia, gathered around a hospital bed where Jason was lying hooked up to machines. After many hours of unanswered prayers, we made the agonizing decision to take Jay off life support and give him the peace that he so desperately searched for. Excuse me. In July of 2004, Jay went off to boot camp in Fort Knox, Kentucky, and after graduating boot camp in AIT training in Fort Carson, Colorado, he deployed to Iraq. I remember waiting days for his call so that I knew he was back from his missions, and though he never said much, I could tell from his voice how sad he was and that he wasn't okay. From February 2005 to March 2006, he served combat in South Baghdad province with an intense squadron mission schedule that resulted in tragedy and catastrophes. He was the dismount driver, the gunner on the M3A2 Bradley fighting vehicle, and armored Humvee, and a member of the dismount team during combat missions. And most of what I know about his service I learned in a letter from his section leader, as Jay didn't like to talk about combat. After completing his tour, he re-enlisted. However, he was honorably discharged from the Army on January 28, 2007 due to PTSD with a disability rating of 10%. Jay reached out to the DAV for help in filing to have his VA rating increased. He couldn't hold down a job, and he hardly ate or slept. His Bradley commander and section leader wrote a letter to support his claims of PTSD and his traumatic brain injury. It took me 4 years after he passed away to read this letter, as I could never get past the first paragraph. It revealed the horrors that my baby witnessed and what he suffered. It took Jason 4 years to receive a 100% disability rating, and every day since he returned home remained a constant battle. He sought help from the VA, but at that time the norm was to prescribe medications. Group therapy was also offered, but he considered himself fortunate to have returned home in one piece and refused to complain about having nightmares and anxiety in groups where soldiers were missing limbs and suffering from extreme physical injuries. He missed many VA appointments, either because he overslept due to his medications, but mostly because he dreaded having to retell his story. He stated that every time he was to meet a psychiatrist, he stated that every time he was to meet with a psychiatrist, that he never got to meet the same one. They would ask him the same questions each time, and he would have to relive the nightmares. He would ask them if they have his file, why can't they just prepare for his visit so that he could learn to move forward instead of always having to look back. In 2009, I was hopeful that things would turn around for him. He met his wife, and she gave birth to their daughter, Isabella, who is my only grandchild. She worked full-time, and he became the stay-home dad. However, the medications he was prescribed and his PTSD interfered with him being able to care for his daughter properly. Eventually, he became self-medicating and turned to alcohol to ease his pain and help him sleep. These behaviors and many others that go along with addiction and PTSD led to him and his wife separating and sharing custody of their daughter. At this time, his physical and mental health declined tremendously. Everything became overwhelming for him. He felt like a failure, and he became severely depressed. He began to put himself in dangerous situations and had little to no self-esteem. Neighbors and so-called friends labeled him as lazy, crazy, weak, irresponsible, and unhinged. He began to believe all of these were true, and he didn't care what happened to him anymore. Many times he stated that he wished he had died in battle with his fallen brothers so they could all be in Valhalla together. In February of 2017, he got into a situation where he had to go to the hospital. The doctor told him that if he didn't stop drinking, he would be dead in 6 months, as his liver was failing. He quit drinking, however, it was too little too late, and on July 6, 2017, we decided to take him off life support. At that moment, I began to understand a little more about the agony that Jason lived with every day. Survivor's guilt, feelings of hopelessness, everything being overwhelming, loss of focus, sleep, and appetite, difficulty finding joy in almost anything, anger, loneliness, and an inner pain that no one and nothing can heal. No one escapes war unaffected. Some are lost in battle, and some are physically wounded, and hundreds of thousands suffer invisible wounds. All of these tragedies drastically change lives and families. And while I am grateful that the VA is working hard to support our wounded veterans and the HERO Act seeks to expand veteran benefits, I'm saddened that for many it comes too late. Expanding veterans benefits, not just behavioral health care, but also housing, needs to go even further. Veterans on Chapter 115 are low income, therefore they are unlikely to be able to front the money for outpatient behavioral health care visits and wait for reimbursement, thus leaving them untreated. Additionally, housing benefits need to increase for veterans, as they should not only be this state's first priority, but the nation's first priority. Only 7% of living Americans have served in the armed forces, and only 0.04% are currently serving. Additionally, of the 7 million residents in Massachusetts, veterans make up only 0.03%. Surely our population can support our veterans. While I'm in favor of the HERO Act, because an increase to veteran benefits is always a positive step forward, I strongly encourage this state and the federal government to make the needs of our precious veterans their first priority. Thank you so much.
Ms. Abbott, thank you so very much. Questions from the committee?
Just a quick comment.
Yeah.
Incredible testimony. Please, hold on a minute. You're a mom that suffered horrible loss, and you've come to the People's House to tell your story. You hit everything. So my son was killed in combat. Your son, basically the same, just years later. So those wounds of war, whether they're visible or invisible, they're there. I just have to thank you for coming to tell the story so we can make better laws. Thank you.
Their souls die there alongside their brothers.
Ma'am, I just want to say thank you for the courage coming here testifying today. Well, you did absolutely perfect.
Thank you.
But the invisible wounds of war, I think it's safe to assume that there's thousands upon thousands of men and women out there right now where nothing's been diagnosed. They're not getting the treatment they need. So I just really thank you for coming forward today and talking about your experience with Jay. It was a failure as a system, but the way that way that we right that wrong, in my opinion anyway, is by hearing from people like yourself with that testimony. So
Yes.
can't thank you enough, ma'am, for coming forward today.
Thank
And,
you, I appreciate it.
Of course. Next up, we have the Veterans Equality Review Board members who are here. Christine, I don't want, if I get the name, Christine Serp? Okay. I got it right the first time. Lynette Gabrilla and Claire Burgess. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And thank you for the work.
Dear Chairman Vilas, Chairman Cassidy, and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to submit testimony in support of the HERO Act. My name is Claire Burgess, and I am here today representing the Veterans Equality Review Board. The HERO Act presents a clear opportunity, and I'm in favor of the proposed act. Our board currently reviews discharges based on gender expression, and sexual identity. I strongly support the HERO Act for its commitment to expand our charge to cover additional protected classes, including race, color, religious creed, national origin, age, and disability. We must move to recognize all veterans equitably. We can do this through this expansion because it means the state sees and recognizes all persons who have served our country. We as a state must be cognizant of the language we use as it reflects our values. Veterans either tune in or tune out based on whether we speak to their identity and era of service. So modernizing the language used for standardization and inclusivity is a necessary step that shows the Commonwealth is speaking to all who've served our country. Additionally, the HERO Act would create a pilot program to support women veterans who have been denied IVF VA benefits, same-sex women who have long been inequitably denied this benefit. It would create a working group of stakeholders to study and identify other potential areas of discrimination related to veteran care in Massachusetts. Army veteran Gilbert Baker once said that visibility is key to our success and to our justice. Massachusetts clearly cares about veterans, and this act shows that we can go the extra mile to be visible in taking down discrimination and inequity where it stands. I call upon each of you to action. I urge the committee to please report HERO Act favorably out of committee. We're grateful for your time and support.
Thank you.
Dear Chairman Vilas, Chairman Cassidy, and members of the committee, thank you for this opportunity to submit testimony in support of the HERO Act. My name is Dr. Christine Serpe. I'm a psychologist and a dedicated member of the Veterans Equality Review Board. I'm also the proud spouse of an Army veteran and the granddaughter of a World War II veteran still alive today. I want to clarify that although I am honored to work for the Veterans Health Administration, today I am not here to represent VA. These opinions are my own. As we consider military-related traumas and events, what first comes to mind are combat events, accidents, even sexual assault. What our first instinct does not reveal are the invisible wounds, experiences of oppression and discrimination that culminate in distress, loss of functioning, isolation. As a psychologist, these are the stories that I have come to know well. Chronic discrimination in the service has the capacity to create PTSD that warrants intervention. But for some, instead of intervention, they may receive an other than honorable discharge, barring them from accessing deserved services and veteran benefits. Many narratives stay with me. A queer immigrant new to this country imagines finding solidarity and belonging in their new homeland, only to be met with xenophobic remarks about their accent and cultural norms. A Black teenager, merely 18, dreams of following in his family's military tradition amidst warnings from loved ones that racism endures in the ranks. A Muslim woman envisions her service as a path to becoming a first-generation college student, and yet must tolerate routine Islamophobia and alienation in her unit in the backdrop of an OEF deployment. Time and time again, what emerges in their stories are the deep commitments to service and to this country. What also endures are the wounds incurred from discrimination on the basis of a fundamental part of somebody's culture, background, and lived experience. The culmination of daily indignities, though they may be less visible or obvious, are nevertheless equally destructive. They are akin to a death by 1,000 cuts. For these reasons, I stand here today in strong support of the HERO Act. This bill not only broadens the scope of the verb to cover all protected classes, it expands benefits and modernizes veteran services, thereby reducing barriers to care and creating greater equity among veterans within the Commonwealth. I also strongly support the creation of new networks and pathways to expand novel mental health treatment and research and reduce barriers to care. I stand in solidarity with the diverse veteran community, and I urge the committee to do the same. Please report the HERO Act favorably out of committee. We are very grateful to your support.
Good afternoon, Chairman Vilas, Chairman Cassidy, and members of the committee. Thank you for this opportunity to offer testimony in support of the HERO Act. My name is Lynette Gabrilla, and I am representing the VERB, the Advisory Committee on Women Veterans, the Wachusett Veteran Services District, and as a 100% disabled veteran. This legislation is extremely important, but I am taking today to focus on what is most personal to me. Since 2014, I have been dedicated to advocating for our local veterans, both in my professional capacity and as a volunteer. My focus has been assisting veterans coping with PTSD due to combat, military sexual trauma, and personal assault. I left for the Army only 3 days after graduating high school. Military ran in my family, and I was proud to serve my country. Going into military intelligence, I planned on retiring from the Army and joining the FBI. My hopes were high, but my drive was strong. I knew there would be hurdles, setbacks, and extra challenges due to my gender. What I had not thought about was the sexual harassment and trauma that I would face would come to overshadow all of my dreams and aspirations. The military instills resilience, teaching us to navigate adversity with fortitude. Yet, even with unwavering perseverance, I confronted an adversary I couldn't overcome. Friendly fire from within my own ranks. Today, I sit before you because of mental health services. Suicidal ideation once clouded my mind, but because I had the privilege of accessing mental health care and I had the support from my friends and family, I prevailed. In military and veteran circles, the stigma surrounding mental health services is significant. This challenge is heightened for individuals that are a part of the BIPOC community, LGBTQ+ community, or belong to any other historically underrepresented populations. As a veterans agent, encouraging trauma survivors to seek mental health services is an uphill battle, especially for those facing financial constraints. Between stigma, cultural barriers, and cost, many do not have access to needed and deserved mental health treatment. Mental health issues are real, and if left untreated, can make even the strongest of us crumble. We have mourned the loss of too many battle buddies to this internal war. Now, you have the unique ability and opportunity to make an impact on our local veterans and the possibility of breaking at least one of the many barriers that have historically kept veterans from receiving treatment. So please, stand with us in support of our local heroes by voting in favor of the HERO Act. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Well, thank you all, and I appreciate your courage coming forward in your testimony today, telling your story. Questions from the committee?
Yes, thank you for your testimony, and I'm glad that you were able to get the services that you needed, because I just want to make the point that my 20 years in the Army, in Intel, there's a lot of female soldiers in Intel. I've had a lot of great female leaders, officers, fellow warrant officers, and they were all treated with respect. So I'm sorry you had a bad experience, but I just wanted to let people know that for the most part in my experience, that's not the case. We work side by side and we respect each other. But thank you.
Any other questions from members of the committee? Again, thank you very much for coming forward with your testimony today. Best of luck with everything going forward. Next up, Ray Carville from Vets, Inc.
Good afternoon, Chair Cassidy, Chair Vilas, and esteemed members of the committee. My name is Ray Carville. I come before you today. I'm the Public Affairs Manager for Veterans, Inc. We're the largest supportive service provider for veterans and their families in New England since 1991. I am not only the Public Affairs Manager, I'm also a United States Army combat veteran, also military intelligence. I live with a disability as well, service-connected disability. First and foremost, I want to express my heartfelt gratitude to Governor Healy and Secretary Santiago for their unwavering commitment to veterans, for their vision, and for actively listening to the critical needs of the veterans in our community. Now, as a combat veteran, like many of my comrades, I've grappled with mental health problems as well. I am in substance use recovery for alcohol. The invisible wounds of war affect us in ways that are often hard to articulate. It's a journey that requires not just acknowledgement, but tangible support, and that's why I'm here today. The HERO Act's initiative to expand veteran access to behavioral health treatment would allow veterans in 115 to be reimbursed for outpatient care. Now, it's not merely a policy change. I'm telling you, it is a beacon of hope for the veterans that are in our communities right now. It is a beacon of hope. We are fortunate enough in Veterans Inc. to interact with veterans all the time in many different capacities. I received a call about 6 months ago. I'd like to tell you a couple of stories about how the impact of access, lowering the barriers to access for mental health services, can change the outcomes. This woman, Nina, called me about 6 months ago. A woman in her late 60s. She wanted to tell me a story about her son, Tim. So Tim, an Army veteran and a corrections officer for 10 years, struggled with financial difficulties and with significant mental health concerns after he left the Army. Tim didn't know where to turn for help. He had little money, lots of financial trouble. He reached out to his friends and his neighbors and communities. He didn't know where to turn. And sadly enough, Tim didn't make it. Tim's body was found on October 28, 2022. And Nina was calling me to donate Tim's clothes so that veterans who needed clothing in the cold, in the winter, would have access to that. So that's where her commitment still lay. I want to tell you another story about Jenna Lease. Jenna Lease was in the Marines from 2008 to 2010. She served honorably in Okinawa. Jenna Lease came back and she suffered from chronic homelessness, from substance abuse. She had a history of military sexual trauma. Jenna Lease was in a bad way before she received a community care network referral to come to our rehabilitative facility at Independence Hall, where we have a program that deals with post-traumatic stress and co-occurring substance use disorder. Jenna Lease went through that program. Jenna Lease graduated that program. And this year, she was a speaker on a panel for our second annual Recovery Summit for providers, practitioners, and policymakers. And she spoke about going back to school to get her degree so that she could go into human services and help veterans as well. And last year, Jenna Lease gave birth to her first child. So when I implore you to consider this behavioral health part of the HERO Act, I tell you that it is truly a matter of life and death. I thank you so much for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much for those. Just excellent stories and examples of the work that you do, and then obviously just Veterans Inc. in general. You folks do a lot of work, you help a lot of people out, and we thank you for that. Questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Hey, Mr. Chair, is it gonna be too hot if we shut that door? Because sometimes that noise comes in, it's hard to hear the person testify. Is it gonna be too hot if we shut that, you think?
Sure.
Shut that? Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. All right, next up we have Jeffrey Chin from Blue Star Families of New England. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Senator Vilas, Senator Representative Cassidy, members of the committee. Thank you so much for your time and giving this opportunity for me to provide testimony in strong support of the HERO Act. My name is Jeffrey Chin. I am the Executive Director for Blue Star Families of New England. Blue Star Families is a national nonprofit organization devoted to serving military families across our country. I run the New England chapter, of which there are over 600,000 service members, veterans, retirees, Department of Defense personnel throughout the region, the vast majority of whom live here in our Commonwealth. And I am privileged to serve in that role as Executive Director. I also come to you as a Lieutenant Commander serving currently in the U.S. Navy. I have the pleasure of serving in the world's finest Navy, but also experiencing what it's like to be a veteran. I have served in Afghanistan for the better part of 2018, and I have personally seen what it is like to serve in a forward area and to come home and need a variety of different services and supports, not only for service members, but for their families as well. Lastly, I come to you as the co-chair of our recently formed and reformed Governor's Advisory Council for Veteran Services. Governor Healy and Secretary Santiago have done a tremendous job in populating this advisory council with individuals, community leaders, representatives of our military community from throughout the Commonwealth, and we are honored and to serve in that role, and we are actually holding our first committee meeting, council meeting this Friday. So this is something that's top of mind for us. I come to you as someone who wants to not only endorse the HERO Act because of its merits and certainly the provisions within. This is something that is important for our military community as a whole. We talk a lot about veterans, and that's certainly correct, and particularly here in the Commonwealth. But we as a nation are facing a crisis in the military community. Retention and recruitment are way down. I think there is a growing gap in understanding of our military community with our civilian neighbors. Blue Star Families has had a strong voice in making sure that our military community, whether it be our families, our service members, our veterans, are properly supported throughout the lifespan of their service and their dedication to our country. One of the larger pieces of our work at Blue Star Families is the Military Family Lifestyle Survey, and this survey is administered every year, and some of the findings are quite telling. I won't go through all the details line by line, but here in Massachusetts in particular, veterans report, over 50% of the veteran respondents in our survey report feeling financial stress, feeling the effect of not only the aftermath of our pandemic, but also just the lack of financial resources, particularly when it comes to paying for health care. The HERO Act helps to address many of these issues, and I not only thank you for your support of this, but I'm urging everyone to continue this trend of supporting our military community. Thank you very much, and happy to answer any questions.
I just want to thank you for your service, thank you for your continued service, and I just want to point out that I think you've touched upon a couple of things that are really, really important, and they're issues that I don't think get enough conversation, if you will. Obviously, the levels of recruitment and retention, how down they are. I think it's one of the biggest challenges in this country that we talk about the least. And then also that civilian-military divide. Post-1973, with no draft, with everyone who's in, less than 1/2% serving, we've got not a lot of people doing a whole lot for the rest. And that has an impact. So I really appreciate you highlighting that. Questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Pay Rep, John Parsons and Patrick Charles.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good to see everybody, committee members. For the record, John Parsons, the Public Retirement Administration, or PERAC. With me is our legal counsel, Patrick Charles. Out of deference to the important topics of the day, I ought to be brief and not repeat. Representative Parasella spoke about the companion bills relative to service buybacks. This was a bill that was left at midnight last session, enacted in the House, and just ran out of time. We've been filing it now for several years because in our job, we speak to retirement boards and members every day. This is a very common refrain. The 180-day service purchase had the best of intentions to get the money into the retirement system. It's not working. As you've heard today, 20-somethings just coming out of the military, taking a public service job for the first time, don't have the money or the career guidance to know that they should spend several $1,000s to purchase their military time. The good news from a budget standpoint, there is no cost to this bill. Retirement boards are going to get their money, albeit a little bit later, but the same service purchase amount is going to be made. We're just providing veterans with the time to vest in the system. They've chosen a career, hopefully at that point. We give the many people who have missed this benefit already the opportunity to make the purchase. The legislature has been filing and passing individual bills for the last several years, which we're happy to see, but it's not capturing most of the people that have already been burned by this restriction. So those are the points. I would add one thing that you're probably not familiar with. As with a lot of statutes, this statute's been changed several times. There is some faulty language that has crept in over time. It is currently causing problems for veterans trying to make this purchase before 10 years. We allow veterans to purchase the time and use it towards your 10 years. So conceivably, somebody comes late to service, serves for several years, makes a military purchase, and they can retire with 10 years. We had been working with the faulty language for years. A recent administrative law decision has put this into jeopardy. So there really isn't now an urgent. I spoke to a veteran recently who is staying in his position. He's eligible to retire. He can't because he can't make the military purchase to which he would otherwise be entitled to. So whether it's a budget amendment, it's contained in the HEROES Act, as Representative Parasella, whether that's the vehicle, we encourage you to get this buyback into play. We're happy to work with the committee on any drafting issues or anything that we can do on any of the pension-related bills that are in the HERO Act. So unless you have any questions.
Just briefly, sir, just the gentleman you just referenced, unable to buy because of that administrative decision you referenced. I just want to make sure I understand that correctly.
Yeah, Patrick, you want to?
So the issue is that an administrative law judge has read the language in Chapter 71 and the companion bill in 2002 that amended Chapter 71 to now require that a person can't, in fact, buy the time until they reach 10 years, which we believe was an error, but it is an administrative decision that is out there right now, and some boards are taking it to mean that a person with 6 years cannot make a purchase. A person with 9 years cannot make the purchase and reach the vesting. And so they're telling people that they cannot buy the time, which is the exact opposite thing of what we originally had the problem with, which was people not being able to buy it because they didn't meet the 180 days. Now this case is bringing into question at what point, and it's at the next level at the Contributory Retirement Appeal Board, but that can be a months, years-long process to get that solved. So we're hoping that this will clear everything up.
If you haven't, can you follow up? Can you send us that opinion?
Sure.
And if you wouldn't mind, I mean, we obviously heard what you just said, but just a little in the email or however you get it to us, a little description about the impact that's having, because that's problematic.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so again, and I'll say that I'm a person that when I got elected, I bought back 4 years of my military time, right? So if I get elected enough times, maybe it'll be all right. But so I have that, just to put that out there as being above board. But so you're saying right now they wouldn't be able to buy until you got to 10 years, or you can buy, but you still have to do 10 years before your extra service kicks in.
The decision, some people are interpreting the decision to mean that you cannot purchase until you reach 10 years.
So you can't, and obviously we're talking about laws that are on the books that are saying you got to purchase within 180 days of being hired. So there's a huge conflict. Yeah, we need to work that through and make sure that we get this bill right so we can clarify either way it is that it ends up. It needs to be not after 10 years or not within 180. It needs to be one or the other, right?
We do believe this language would
Okay.
satisfy both of those problems.
Okay, thank
And
you.
then just to follow up on something, it was actually passed by both the House and the Senate. So we hear you. We hear you. Questions? Yes, please, Rep.
Good afternoon, and thank you for your testimony. As you know, all these issues are vital and super important to all of us here. I'm going to be one of those veterans who didn't opt in or was too busy when I was in my 20s deciding to opt into this retirement system. But I do have a question for those who are not too familiar with this, as a lot of folks won't be. The veteran who can opt in once this legislation is clear, is it only applicable to veterans who serve in the National Guard, or is it to all veterans
Anyone that qualifies as a veteran under the.
Okay, and they can purchase into this, they can opt into this retirement system, regardless if it's National Guard, federal level service, correct?
Correct. Just to clarify, generally speaking, the purchase doesn't need to be made, on that one day. More than likely, it's up to the retirement board, but they enter into a payment plan. So it's simply making application and making it clear that you're going to purchase the time.
So just to clarify, this language will help hopefully clarify across the board that any veteran can utilize this, they can opt in, and then once we pass this, I'm very hopeful, we will give those who didn't have the opportunity or turn down the opportunity to actually opt back in.
Correct. Anyone that's still in public service.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Which triggered another question. Thank you, Representative, that I had. So if we were to, I knew that was going to happen. If we were to change the definition of a veteran, what impact would that have?
So I noticed that the HEROES Act has some changes to the definition of veteran as regards to, I believe, Chapter 115, but I do not believe that that addresses any issues with the definition for our purposes in Chapter 32, because we go by the Chapter 4, Section 7, Clause 43rd definition, which requires that you have active duty military time during specific time periods in order to qualify as a veteran. So we have, in fact, encountered situations where a member of the National Guard could be a National Guard member for 20 years and never have the activation necessary to be a veteran. So they're not eligible for any benefits under Chapter 32. They may, in fact, be eligible for federal benefits under a law passed, I believe, under the Obama administration, and they may be eligible for benefits under this HEROES Act, but they would not be under Chapter 32.
Interesting. Any other questions? We appreciate you. Thank you very much for coming in. Senator O'Connor. And I apologize. And that
No problem.
the two gentlemen
I'll do
with
some
you.
introductions, and I'll be very brief. First off, thank you. And to every member of the committee who served our country, thank you as well. It's much appreciated. I'm here to testify in support of Senate Bill 1750 and House Bill 2627, which is an act relative to veterans buyback filed by Chair Vilas, as well as Representative Parasella. I wanted to say hello to Chair Cassidy as well. Good to see you. I think that a lot of the ins and the outs has been talked about. We're here today with Gene Doherty, who's representing the Fire Chiefs Association of Massachusetts, as well as Deputy Chief Justin Myers in Weymouth and Chief Keith Stark in Weymouth, who are two veterans who would be eligible for this. I think that it's pretty simple that when you get on the job in police, fire, your educator, really anything, I think that you go through a lot of just trying to get your footing in place in your new profession, and the last thing on your mind is your retirement. And then all of a sudden the clock goes by, and it gets to that point in time, and you look back and you have some regrets about some of the things you didn't do, whether it be invest or, in this circumstance, opt into a retirement plan. And I think that it just makes perfect common sense to support our veterans in this way, where they've left active duty, or some of them still remain in the reserves, and then they go into public service, and it's our duty to make sure we take care of them just because they didn't decide to check a box at some point in time a long, long time ago. So that's my justification for this. I think it's a great bill, Chair Vilas. I appreciate you and Representative Parasella, who I saw earlier here today, for filing it. I appreciate Perek's comments that I just heard. And I'll, at this point in time, turn it over to Gene Doherty, representing the fire chiefs.
Good afternoon, Chair Vilas, Chair Cassidy. As the senator stated, I represent the Fire Chiefs Association of Massachusetts. We're very disheartened that this Representative Paracella's bill died on the governor's desk last session. It was very hard. It's very heartening to be here and have Perec in favor of something given some time. But as they stated, it's no cost, which is tantamount to really helping us immensely. We're here to ask for your consideration and support for the Senate Bill 1750, House Bill 2627, and 2662, as well as the governor's proposed legislation, which is all-encompassing. So we're hoping that the collaboration that your committee can do to get these all on board and to correct what Perec has said is a clear faux pas that has developed on the wording of some of the legislation. I turn it over to Chief from Weymouth, Chief Stark, and Deputy Chief Myers, who are both veterans, as the Senator mentioned, and give you their personal opinions and experiences with this problem in the legislation.
Thank you, Gene. Thank you, Senator O'Connor. Chairman Vilas, Chairman Cassidy, members of the committee, thank you for taking this opportunity to listen to us with our issues with this bill, and we are in full support of Senate Bill 1750, filed by Chair Vilas, and House Bill 2662, filed by Rep. Sylvia, and House Bill 2627, filed by Representative Paracella. My name is Keith Stark, and I'm a lifelong resident of Weymouth, and I proudly served the United States Navy from 1990 to 1995. I urge you to favorably support all three of these bills through the legislative process. I believe that they have the potential to make a real difference in the lives of many veterans in our state. As an honorably discharged Navy veteran, I returned to my hometown of Weymouth, where I was appointed to the Weymouth Fire Department in 1997. I also purchased my first home and got married that same year. In November of '99, my wife and I welcomed our first child, and my family grew in 2002, the birth of my second child. Life was good. I'd like to share with you the unfortunate situation that left me and many other veterans in a difficult position. In 2003, as a relatively new husband, new homeowner, new father, and firefighter, I received a letter from the Weymouth Retirement Board offering me 180 days to decide if I wanted to buy back my military time. As much as I wanted to buy back my time, it was not physically responsible for my family at that time. Regrettably, I did not know that I essentially waived my right as a veteran to buy back my time in the future. Fast forward to May 31st, 2013, I was sworn in as the fire chief of the Weymouth Fire Department. The following week, I went to the retirement board to buy back my time, only to be told that because I didn't buy my time in 2003, I was no longer eligible to do so. The law only allowed 180 days for a veteran to decide to buy back their time. The same situation has left me and many other veterans in a difficult position. We as veterans have served our country honorably and would like to be able to receive the benefits that we have earned through the service. Senate Bill 1750, House Bill 2627, and 2662 would allow veterans who are unable to purchase their military time back to do so, regardless of when they were employed. These bills would provide much-needed support to veterans in our state. I urge you to consider these bills favorably and to support our veterans who have made significant sacrifice for our country. Thank you for your attention to this important matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator O'Connor. To Chair Vilas, Chair Cassidy, and members of the committee, thank you very much for allowing us to provide testimony here today. My testimony is very similar to Chief Stark's testimony. You know, at young age on the fire department, I was given the same letter from the retirement board, and the decision was that I just didn't have the time or the money, and I didn't consult other people in coming up with that strategy to what to do. I jump back and I think about all the stories that I've heard today, and I'd like you to favorably consider the HERO bill as well as the Senate bill and the House bills proposed in front of us today through the full committee. Here I stand before you, a man who served this country and his community now for over 31 years. I know I don't stand alone. There are many other veterans in service to their community who would cherish the opportunity to make a different decision today than the decision I made back some 20-something years ago. So again, I ask that you favorably push this through the committee.
One of the things that I would say, gentlemen, is that, I mean, for me personally, right, done with service, I don't even know if I'd know what that means. Veterans buyback, when you just get out of service, you have 180 days. What does that mean? So the message that you say, and others have said, it has an impact. Thank you for your service in multiple capacities. Senator O'Connor, thank you for your willingness always to engage on this issue and all veterans issues and any number of issues. And questions from the committee?
Just want to say the same thing. Senator Vilas and I will be working closely on this, and you've got a class act here, and Senator O'Connor.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Stephen Abrams, NAACP Brockton branch. Thank you very much. Welcome.
Good afternoon. I want to thank the committee for hearing me testifying today.
one thing that I remember of leaving home back in 2006, when I landed in country, I heard the American contingent has landed. I've never been so proud a day in my life. I'm a Plymouth County resident, and my senator is here, my state rep is here, and I want to thank them. I'm 100% behind this bill. This bill has allowed us to be a catalyst in this country to launch into the areas that we need to launch into as veterans. 1638, the first muster in Salem, Massachusetts. The Ancient and Honorable marched across that field and was given the orders of the militia. I am proud to say today that I am a member of the Ancient and Honorable Field Artillery Company of Massachusetts. Kid from Dorchester, travel the world, have this opportunity. One thing that chases me by day and haunts me by night. When I returned home from deployment, one of my soldiers found me, and he was going through a mental stress, a mental issue. He received a letter, and it said, Veterans Region Office, we determined that the following condition was not related to military service. What condition? Residual gunshot wound, scars, PTSD, bilateral shoulder injury, neck and broken shoulder and lung injury. He received this letter and he was stuck. From that time, it took us, I think, about 5 years to get him fully service connected. But to this day, this letter chases me by day and it haunts me by night. I am 100% behind this HERO Act, and I appreciate the governor's commitment to our veterans. However, somebody dropped the ball. They have chose for us to go overseas in defense of freedom. When we returned home, it's like we've been abandoned. So today, through mental health, I am working on my degree at Lesley University through art therapy, allowing our veterans to talk, and talk. You have to talk because we remember the days when we had mission, mission, mission. Don't worry about the man, worry about the mission. So in defense of freedom, we stand here today. If not Massachusetts, then who? If not now, then when? 1638, we walked across that commons in Salem, Mass. I got an opportunity to march across those commons also with the 54th Regiment. And it was never a prouder day in my life. And I tell everybody that I meet, you have to come back to where Massachusetts began. That's right. The VA hospital has been in agreement with the NAACP, and they have made a memo of understanding for outreach. Outreach, outreach, outreach. And we're using every lever that we have in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to make that happen, to talk about your military experience. So please, I'm preaching to the choir because I'm a Navy guy, Navy CB, and I retired combat engineer. So during Army-Navy game, I'm so confused. So I'm working through that through some therapy, but we'll be okay. So I just want to thank the committee and thank you for your time. And I tell you, I would have never believed it if I didn't see it myself. We determined the following conditions were not related to your military service: gunshot wound. And you know the process. So I just want to thank you for that time. Thank you so much.
Appreciate your testimony today. Congrats with the degree, that art,
Yes,
the arts. I think that's, I don't know what you're using that for, but what I'll tell you is that's the art therapy stuff.
Yes, sir.
And these topics we're talking about, behavioral health, all that stuff
Yes, sir.
is leading. So just really, really thank you for your service and pending questions.
Yes,
Thank you for your service very much and being a hero in Brockton. I appreciate everything you do in Brockton for us in the community.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hold on, Senator Brady.
Oh, sorry, Senator Brady.
Thank you.
I got it.
Thank you, Steve, for your testimony and your service. And this HEROES Act is very important, as well as a buyback piece of legislation. And I'm honored to serve on the Veterans Committee. But on a lighter note, you did a great job hosting the MLK breakfast the other day. But more importantly, it's all about the children and those students and those children that performed. If you can get them to come into the State House, we'd love to have them in here. They did a great job at that MLK breakfast, and they just blew me away with their performance. So if you ever want to bring them into the State House to do a tour, and we'll have them here and we'll provide lunch for them, let me know.
Senator Brady, thank you so much. The 22 years since I've known you, you've always been a hard charger and you've always committed to veterans. And that gave me confidence when I first bought my first home in Brockton, knowing that you established a platform for me to launch my family, my little 6-year-old daughter holding signs and working her through your campaigns. But thank you so much, sir.
Last thing, sir. So first of all, go Army. Sorry to do that to you, but go Army.
I agree. Anybody Navy?
But Mr. Chairman, he brings up a good point, because it's a lot of times it's where you get out of the military, where you retire from, that determines your VA status, your disability status, not what you have, but who puts it together for you. I mean, I was blessed that I ended my career in the Washington, D.C. area, Fort Belvoir, which they have the best facilities going. But I mean, I served at Fort Bragg, Fort Hood, and I heard stories from some of those where they don't have the facilities that when they put together their packet to say, this is what happened to me over my 20 years, what am I entitled to? And maybe, I don't know how we can address that maybe at the state level, just having a better system for folks getting out of the military and retiring.
Thank you very much. Professional firefighters of Massachusetts, Paul Jakes, Craig Hardy, Craig Chapman. Welcome, gentlemen.
Good afternoon, Chair Bayless, Chair Cassidy, members of the committee and staff. Thank you for the opportunity to testify before you today. For the record, my name is Paul Jakes, Legislative Agent for the Professional Firefighters of Massachusetts. Joined to my right, Craig Hardy, Legislative Agent, Professional Firefighters of Massachusetts. And to my left, Craig Chapman, Area 2 Vice President for the Mass Coalition of Police. Collectively, we represent almost 20,000 members of public safety here in Commonwealth of Massachusetts. We have submitted written testimony, but we'd like to go on the record in support of the following bills that you've already heard a lot from today. House Bill 2627 and Senate Bill 1750, an act relative to veterans buyback. House Bill 2662, an act relative to veterans buyback. And House Bill 4172, an act honoring, empowering, and recognizing our service members and veterans, otherwise known as the HERO Act. As you've heard earlier, House Bill 2672, Senate Bill 1750, and House Bill 2662 repeal the language from the 1996 session law requiring veterans to purchase credible service in the first 180 days. We've had a lot of in-depth testimony before you on that, and also included it in our written testimony. But we did notice that last session, as you heard, it did make it to be engrossed in the House and the Senate, but didn't make it across the finish line. So we're hoping, once favorably released from your committee, it would be released and for passage. House Bill 4172, we feel this is historic veterans legislation that will undoubtedly have an impact on our members who have sacrificed so much for our great country during the military service and as firefighters in their respective communities. And as you heard earlier, this is across the Commonwealth. Thankfully included in this bill, the HERO Act, the language addressing the veterans buyback has been put in there, and we're hoping that would pass as well. If I could, on a personal note, I come from a military family. My grandfather served in World War II with the Big Red One. My father was a 30-year career active duty military, reaching the rank of Chief Master Sergeant, so I guess it makes me a military brat. And then myself, I did 22 years of service and 2 tours in Iraq. This bill, these bills, mean a lot to me and my family. They mean a lot to our members. And we ask that you release these favorably, because as you heard earlier from the Secretary Santiago, said that this matters. These bills matter. And it matters not only to me personally, but to our members and to many veterans across the Commonwealth. I'd like to thank Senator Vilas, Representative Paracella, Governor Healy, Secretary Santiago, and all of you and others for your leadership on these important pieces of legislation. And at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Craig Hardy.
Hello, thank you for your time, Chair Vilas, Chair Cassidy, and the whole committee. I mean, you've heard a lot of testimony today, and I just want to be blunt and honest about it. I mean, our veterans should get every benefit afforded to them. I know everyone in here is probably in agreement with it, and there should be no check of a box or time limit. So just on all those bills Paul just discussed, I mean, it was just on right at the finish line last year. We should definitely get them over the finish line this year, and I know you and your committee will do all you can to do that, and I just want to thank you in advance for your work and all the work you have put into it, and let's do what's right and give our veterans everything they deserve. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Who says police and fire don't get along? First of all, thank you for this opportunity to put written and verbal testimony in front of this committee today. Chairman Vilas and Chairman Cassidy and the rest of the members of the committee. My name is Craig Chapman. As Paul mentioned earlier, I'm the Area 2 Vice President for Massachusetts Coalition of Police. I'm also part of their legislative team, along with our esteemed Vice President John Nelson. I'm also a retired Sergeant Major from the United States Army, Massachusetts National Guard, deployed 3 times. Also Chairman of the Retirement Board in the town of North Attleboro. So the important pieces of the legislature that incorporate the buyback are familiar to me, especially as a retired police officer for the town of North Attleboro and utilizing that buyback program. So I just wanted to extend my condolences to Chair Vilas in bringing up the tragic loss of our Navy SEAL in Massachusetts. Unfortunately, I did have that experience of losing a fellow comrade and brother in arms when I was deployed to Iraq in 2009, actually a year ago yesterday, Specialist Matthew Pellini. So my heartfelt goes out for condolences to you, your wife, and the community of Westfield and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. As many have testified here today, a lot of important topics within this legislation. I'm happy to be here and give favorable testimony towards House Bill 4172, the HERO Act by the Governor, Senate Bill 1750 by Senator Vilas, House Bill 2627, Gerald Paracella, House Bill 2662, Representative Alan Sylvia, and Senate Bill 2353, Senator Bruce Tarr. The only comments I would make, a lot of it's been touched upon regarding the buyback. It absolutely is a great benefit for our veterans in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts that not only serve in our military, but then forge forward into a career within the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and all the municipalities around us. We are one of the largest police union that represents over 5,000 police officers, and many of us are veterans from combat. So it is important, and I think what this legislation puts together is trying to streamline the legislation and how to buy it back, and give the opportunity to those that may have missed in all these stories that you've heard today to be able to get that opportunity before they retire to make that purchase back. And I would just, again, urge the committee to vote this out favorably. Thank you for your time.
I would just say, and this obviously is obvious, but I'm just going to state it anyway. I mean, many of the professions, I'm looking at firefighters and police, leave one field, specifically the military, where you put yourselves in harm's way and join another. And that's something that can't be lost on us, that public safety continues. So we thank you for that. Questions from the committee? Thank you for your service, gentlemen.
Thank you.
John? Michael Pereira? You good? All right.
All right, we have Sean Chapman. Sam Chapman, virtually. Sam, are you still on? All right, we'll come back to that. Melissa Willett, Department of Defense. Virtual.
Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, yep. Go right ahead, Melissa.
Senator Vilas, Representative Cassidy, and honorable members of the Veterans and Federal Affairs Committee, the Department of Defense is grateful for the opportunity to support policies reflected in H4172, particularly Section 33, which would amend the definition of veteran in the Massachusetts general laws to include all branches of the armed forces. Defining armed forces in state policy is one of the top personnel and readiness policy priorities for the Department of Defense because of recent force structure changes. My name is Melissa Willett, and I'm the New England Region Liaison at the United States Department of Defense State Liaison Office, operating under the direction of the Undersecretary of Defense for Personnel and Readiness. We represent the department and establish relationships with state leaders across the country who are concerned for troops and their families' welfare by harmonizing state and federal law on policy problems of national significance. These are identified by the Office of the Secretary of Defense, the military departments, and the National Guard Bureau as areas where states can play a crucial role. Creation of the Space Force required changes in force structure to occur at the federal level. In order to ensure that state laws align with federal changes, the department perceives states can minimize disruptions in benefits and services for service members and dependents by updating various definitions of military service in Massachusetts to include the Space Force. Failure to pursue the modifications proposed in this bill may have significant negative consequences on military recruiting, readiness, resiliency, and retention. One of the key reasons for adding the Space Force to the definition of armed forces is to ensure the men and women who serve in this new branch receive the same benefits and protections as those in the other branches of the military. This includes access to health care, housing, education, and other benefits that are essential to the well-being of military personnel and their families. Broadening the definition of veteran by aligning the State Chapter 115 program definition of a veteran with the United States Department of Veterans Affairs definition will allow the Executive Office of Veteran Services to serve more veterans in the Commonwealth. Massachusetts is home to just under 150 Space Force guardians and family members. The policies outlined in this bill will help those members retain eligibility for services and will ensure that military families are equally represented under state laws defining their service. In closing, let me say that we are grateful for the tremendous effort that Massachusetts has historically given in supporting our service members and their families. As both a service member and military spouse myself, and on behalf of the Department of Defense, I thank you for your time and stand ready to answer any questions you may have.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much for your testimony. Any questions from the committee? No questions, I appreciate it, thank you. All right, we have Michael Barg virtually. Michael Barg. All set, Mike. I think your microphone is muted. Well, we'll come back to you, Mike. Thank you. All right, we have panel number 5. Michael Vila, Robert Kinsman, and Robert Bronson from the Disabled American Veterans Department of Mass. Thank you. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Senator Velas, Representative Cassidy, committee members, thank you for inviting us. My name's Bob Kinsman, a veteran and former combat crew commander for the United States Air Force, working with nuclear weapons. I'm also the commander of the DAV, Department of Massachusetts. With me today is Mr. Coleman Nee. He's a national junior vice commander for the Disabled American Veterans. Bob Bronson, who's a vice commander for the state of Massachusetts, and Mike Valila, who's the adjutant for the state. The Disabled American Veterans Department of Massachusetts is one of the largest and oldest wartime veteran service organizations in the Commonwealth. We've been serving veterans and their families for over 100 years, and we're trusted not only by our 25,000 plus members, but also many thousands more members throughout the Commonwealth. The DAV Department of Massachusetts unequivocally supports Governor Maura Healey's bill H4172, an act honoring, empowering, and recognizing our service members and veterans. We are optimistic that this bill will pass and become the largest piece of veterans legislation brought before the Commonwealth in decades. Many of our veterans, especially our disabled and aging veterans, can no longer sustain or maintain gainful employment. These veterans rely both upon the VA and state benefits to support their most basic needs. The HERO Act increases the disabled veterans annuity, prevents the COLA cliff, and expands veterans' property tax exemptions, all of which would positively impact these veterans by helping them maintain their standard of living. Adjusting the veterans' residential requirement for Chapter 115 from 3 years to 1 day ensures that our homeless veteran population, as well as fixed and low-income veterans, are cared for and not overlooked. Also, increasing the vet hire tax credit to employers increases job opportunities for chronically unemployed, low-income, and underemployed service-connected disabled veterans by incentivizing employment of these individuals. Additionally, increasing access to the active duty buyback program, which has been discussed earlier, allows veterans more opportunity to participate and more time for transition to civilian life for those being discharged from the military. Expanding veterans' motor vehicle benefits allows many low and fixed income veterans to utilize the veterans license plate feature that they might not be otherwise able to afford. This would allow all veterans to show their pride in service to our great country. Also, with women veterans now one of the fastest growing demographics in our veterans community, this will allow and introduce a new woman veterans license plate decal. Also, the bill's commitment to inclusivity broadens the definition of a veteran, allowing more Massachusetts veterans to be eligible for the annuity, for Chapter 115 benefits, for access to Massachusetts Veterans Home, and other state benefits. H4172 also expands the scope of the Veterans Equality Review Board, updates the definition of a veteran dependent, and supports same-sex couples who have been denied IVF reimbursement by the Veterans Health Administration. These updates and expansions make veteran services more inclusive to many protected class veterans, all of which ought to have been addressed long ago. Finally, by providing clear statutory authority for medical and dental benefits, operation of veteran cemeteries, studying alternative therapies for veterans' mental health disorders, and modernizing statutory language for inclusivity, we are again addressing the needs of protected classes of veterans who rightfully deserve acknowledgement by the state. In summary, the HERO Act expands benefits to veterans, creates more opportunities for inclusivity, and modernizes veteran services across the state, providing benefits to thousands of our veterans. This bill is recognized by many as one of the largest pieces of veteran legislation brought before the Commonwealth in decades. And for decades, our unwavering priority has been to provide access to benefits for veterans. As such, it is the position of the DAV, Department of Massachusetts, to favorably support Governor Maura T. Healey's bill H4172, an act honoring, empowering, and recognizing our service members and veterans. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for everything everybody is doing. And you brought up a couple of good points, very good points about the homeless veterans. You know, we have an awful lot in Brockton, and this would help that. Also the pride, the plate, the license plates. We haven't really talked about that today. That just shows the pride that, you know, the governor's bill that we have in this. More testimony, or?
Yes, sir. Anyone else?
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Cassidy and honorable members of the committee. My name's Coleman Nee, National Line Officer with Disabled American Veterans. Our testimony really stands, and our commander really hit it out of the park. Other than to say we are deeply appreciative of Governor Healy and Secretary Santiago's willingness to look into our veterans' benefits and our laws and statutes, regulations. As we know, Massachusetts has some of the strongest in the history of our country, but many of those were established 50, 75, 100 years ago. Our veterans population has evolved significantly since then. Our laws and regulations have not always kept pace, and I think this will be a really good opportunity to make sure that we're meeting the needs of today's veterans. And you know, veterans have never been a homogeneous community, anyways, but especially true today in terms of race, sex, sexual orientation, age, and it is very important that we not, as Senator John Vela says, yes, a veteran is a veteran, but we also can't look at each veteran and think that the resources, supports, and benefits that that veteran needs is necessarily the same as another veteran. So as an older male veteran, I don't necessarily need the same services and benefits and support that, say, a younger female veteran would have coming out of the service today. So I would just really echo our commander, and we really appreciate the governor and the secretary looking into this. And we stand ready if you, as we begin the process to modernize even more. I want you to know, Disabled American Veterans, we want to be a resource, we want to be a sounding board, we want to be someone that you can work with to make sure that we're doing the best we can for the Commonwealth. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions in the committee? Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Do we have Alicia Redding? Thank you. Welcome, Alicia.
Seems like a lot of chairs. Right. Oh, it's scary up here.
No,
Hi.
not at all. Not at all.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time. My name is Dr. Alicia Redden, and as an elder millennial, I will have to read this off my phone. I'm a Navy veteran, a former VSO, and the current chairwoman of the DAV's Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Justice Committee here in Massachusetts. I'm here today to provide my testimony and strong support for the HERO Act. This legislation is a vital step towards honoring, empowering, and recognizing the incredible contributions that all of us and our brothers and sisters in arms have made. I'm 100% disabled. I'm also a survivor of military sexual assault. And something that we've heard time and time again over the years is it's not everyone's experience. And I would do anything to make it so it was nobody's experience, but here we are. I was fortunate that I was a VSO when my life fell apart, because I could actually navigate the system on my own. I knew the ins and outs because I had helped people do it for years. And when I started to appreciate my evening nightcaps a little bit too much and maybe a little bit too early, maybe a few too many back-to-back, I knew where to go. But that was not without the collateral damage to my career, the relationships around me, and for many who need the help most, the system is just too bureaucratic, complex, and disheartening. The proposed benefit expansion initiatives with the notable expansion of behavioral health treatment options demonstrate a genuine commitment to improving the well-being of our veterans and their families. I encourage everyone here to scan the room. Notice the flag behind me by the door, the American flag lapel pins on many of your colleagues' tops. They're visual representations of our pride in this country. When we commenced our proceedings today, it was with the pledge. And at events and ceremonies, we honorably stand and render salute for our national anthem. While these are absolutely meaningful expressions showcasing our support for veterans and for our country, they are symbolic. So I encourage the committee today and all in attendance to push for this legislation to be reported favorably. This is our opportunity to make real, tangible change and take tangible action to support each other and all of our brothers and sisters. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your service. And sometimes bureaucracy can get in the way of a lot of good things that we're doing. I appreciate everything you've done. Questions from the committee? Thank you. You did great.
Thank you.
Next, we have Michael Barg. We're trying to get him back virtually.
Hello.
There you
Can
go.
you hear me?
All set, Mike.
Okay. I'm Michael Barg, a captain, U.S. Navy retired, living in Lexington. I served for 30 years in the Navy Reserve and on active duty supporting Operation Enduring Freedom. Service-disabled veterans, as determined by the Veterans Administration, depend on monthly disability income to provide economic support for themselves and their families when the nature and degree of their disability prevents them from holding substantial employment. Now, in the interest of brevity, I've submitted my written testimony, and I'll just skip to the key points. Both proposed bills, H 4172 and H 4162, that I've wanted to talk about, are a welcome and tangible acknowledgement of military veteran service to our country. However, both require some modification to improve their impact and clarity. And for these reasons, I strongly recommend both bills with the following notable improvements. Specify the Schedule 100 disability from the Veterans Administration to include veterans designated as total disability individual unemployability, or TDIU. That results in the same disability compensation and benefits as Schedule 100%. Now, this clarifying point is necessary because otherwise many TDIU veterans, whom the VA also deems as permanently and totally disabled, may be excluded and are in the same situation as Schedule 100% veterans. TDIU disability is identical to Schedule 100% compensation and benefits. The distinction is the way the Veterans Administration calculates disability, but it's a distinction without a difference for veterans deemed as permanently and totally disabled. Also include the designation TDIU with the 100% veterans improves the legislation clarity. I would recommend replacing H 4172's proposed $2,500 property tax exemption with H 4162's total property tax exemption for the Schedule 100% and TDIU veterans. Now, one final point to eliminate an unnecessary administrative burden on veterans and town assessor's office. Eliminate the need for an annual reapplication of the property tax abatement for Schedule 100% and TDIU permanently disabled veterans. Since the veteran's medical condition is deemed permanent by the cognizant authority of the Veterans Administration, there's no valid purpose in wasting time reapplying for the same paperwork every year as the veteran's condition doesn't change. I'd like to thank the committee members for their kind attention and time to hear my testimony. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Thank you for your service. Any questions from the committee? No questions? Thank you very much. We have panel number 6, Sako Grushin, Rebecca Slater, Emily Ondashek. Winter Police, Boston Psychedelic Research Group. Thank you. Thank you for sticking around.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. I'd just like to say, with the permission of the veteran on this panel, I'm going first. So, Chair, members, thank you for extending time to me to share my statement of support for H 4172, also known as the HEROES Act. Please note that these opinions are my own. My name is Sarko Gergeri, and I come here as an active, working law enforcement professional and psychotherapist who tries every day to find and connect people to help they need to prevent undue suffering, death, and arrest. A subset of people who I cross paths with are military veterans and their families, a group I have the utmost respect towards. Our veterans step up and serve all our people when called upon by our nation. They place themselves in harm's way to ensure we have safety, security, and freedom here in the United States. This type of selfless service and sacrifice to the United States of America demands allies in the legislature to ensure our veterans and their families are taken care of when they return to civilian life after their tour of duty. The HEROES Act ensures that veterans have an increase in annuity payments, reimbursement for behavioral health services, increase in tax credit for employers who hire veterans, and increased property tax exemptions for veterans. But that's not all. I'd like to highlight two other important aspects of this bill. We have many veterans who return and want to continue their service by competing for police roles at the state and municipal departments. This bill will increase the time that veterans in public service can pay to have 4 years of their service count in the state retirement system. This type of incentive helps ensure the pathway into law enforcement for military veterans remains full of highly qualified candidates who want a job in a profession I care deeply about, a profession that is struggling to hire qualified individuals. Finally, the bill creates a public-private working group to study the health benefits of psychedelics as treatment for veterans suffering physical or mental disorders related to their services. We claim to value evidence support for practices, yet we have barriers in place at the federal and state level that have for too long prevented the creation of a scientific evidence base around psychedelic medicines. This bill offers a good step in correcting the errors of the past, a move that will add to the scientific base related to these therapies. Please note that Australia has already allowed their psychiatrists to prescribe 2 psychedelics, MDMA and psilocybin. The reason they cited for doing this is that the evidence base in support of such a move is overwhelming, robust, and already available. Imagine. Our people who serve deserve access to psychedelics labeled breakthrough therapies by our federal government. Therapies that push treatment-resistant, severe PTSD and depression into sustained remission. These are available in Australia, not here. Why? As was said earlier, we should lead. We must lead. We are Massachusetts. Let's begin to fix this problem. Let's pass this bill. Thank you.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. I'm honored to provide testimony to support the HERO bill and its provisions for mental health service provisions, including this working group that will study the healing benefits of psychedelics. My name is Rebecca Slater. I have worked as a defense contractor for over 20 years. Additionally, I support and advocate for therapy, for psychedelic therapy for veterans. There is a stat that nearly 22 veterans commit suicide every day. Take into account the story we heard today and the peripheral effects of substance abuse disorder, and it's why here nearly double. For this reason, I lead a veteran support community within the Boston Psychedelic Research Group, which is an educational nonprofit community that includes some of the top researchers from MGH, from Johns Hopkins, and others that are dedicated to bringing these therapies safely into our medical and mental health systems. I'm also Heroic Hearts Ambassador, which is a nonprofit dedicated to saving veterans' lives by taking them out of this country to South America to do ayahuasca and the healing stories that come back, again, breakthrough and astounding. They also support mental health research. Through this work, I met Emily next to me, who will share her story as a veteran. So I'd like to talk about and share a peripheral view that looks at the families. So psychedelic-assisted therapy is making progress where even trauma-focused therapy has stalled. This hits home for me because of the mental health struggles of a family member. And the work I do with Heroic Hearts and BPRG, I have the honor to bear witness to so many beautiful healing stories of veterans who've taken psychedelics and are walking here today when they would not have been otherwise. In this, I lead this so they know they're not alone. And there's a theme that comes up quite a bit, and that is the sadness and shame they feel when PTSD brings distance, numbness, or worse to their children. Psychedelic-assisted therapy allows the return of them emotionally to their family and allows them to be present again, to love again. Where in the absence of that presence and love, a costly secondary effect is put into motion. You probably know that PTSD commonly results in depression, substance abuse disorder, and suicide. What you might not know is the effect of these conditions have an effect on their child's long-term well-being. Adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs, refer to the potentially traumatic events that occur in childhood. These experiences include various forms of abuse, as well as exposure to substance abuse, mental illness, and violence. Children who are exposed to multiple ACEs, which is all too common in a family with PTSD, have a 4 to 12-fold risk for later alcoholism, drug abuse, depression, and suicide attempts. They're also some of the hardest to treat mental health patients, as they have a variety of transdiagnostic mental health processes that prevent the effective therapeutic outcomes. The efficacy of psychedelic-assisted therapy brings an incredible hope for PTSD and ACEs sufferers, where other therapeutic modalities have fallen short. So I'm here today asking you to continue the Commonwealth's leadership in healthcare innovation by approving this measure to study the health benefits of these therapies for veterans. This public and private group would provide state and medical leaders with the education and confidence in taking the next steps in implementing these life-changing and life-saving therapies. Too many soldiers' lives have been lost. Too many children are left to walk in that dark shadow. The emotional, social, and financial cost of PTSD in this community is already too high. On behalf of veterans and their children, please consider supporting this measure.
Hello. I'd like to thank the committee, 1, for existing, and 2, for having me here today. So my name is Emily Onischuk. I'm a 4th-generation Navy veteran, Wakefield native. My family's been here since I immigrated from Italy, way long ago. And I'm currently the grassroots campaign director for Massachusetts for Mental Health Options. So I served as an EOD and diving officer in the Navy. I was in the Navy from 2017 to 2022. And I know that natural psychedelic therapies work not just because of the myriad of research on the topic, but because I have very personal firsthand experience with them. I found psychedelics as a last resort after exhausting the mental health resources provided to me from the military and the VA. So I'll tell you a little bit about how I got there. My brother Andrew, my little brother, was radicalized online to the alt-right at age 11. If you're not familiar with the alt-right, the term just kind of covers neo-Nazis, colloquially. And he was murdered shortly after his 18th birthday in a very public case several months before I commissioned into the Navy. At the time of his death, I was already under immense pressure because I was the nation's first female Navy SEAL candidate, which made my traumatic family situation even more complicated. The complex grief and PTSD I incurred as a result of Andrew's death, compounded with my experience in the military, took a severe toll on my mental health. Life had once been an exciting, interesting place for me to be, but during the course of my service, it became something I dreaded waking up to. I dragged myself through every day, unsure of how to make sense of the world, what had happened to my family, or why I was alive at all. That survivor's guilt is a real thing. Life had lost its color, and I had lost much of my motivation to keep going. I was discharged from the Navy honorably as a conscientious objector, and I immediately sought help through the VA and worked with their mental health department and their art therapist. I'm very grateful for the services I was provided, but access to those resources was limited, and the art therapist at Bedford is no longer there, so that program no longer exists. I'm just going to plug that. And I still found myself adrift and at odds with my life, even after all that support. Fortunately, in the midst of this tumultuous time, I was introduced to the HOPE Project, which is a nonprofit that funds female veterans and military spouses to attend plant medicine retreats abroad. They've since merged with Heroic Hearts. In October of 2022, I attended a week-long psilocybin retreat in Jamaica, and it profoundly improved my quality of life, unlike any of the other modalities I had tried. I experienced psilocybin for the first time under the supervision of a seasoned team of facilitators with a cohort of 14 other women. The entire process helped me weave the disparate and difficult pieces of my life together in a way that I couldn't access in traditional talk therapy, and the effects of that retreat stay with me to this day. I'm incredibly grateful for the support I received from the Hope Project, and I wish I could grant the many other people I know struggling with their own battles this opportunity, because I know it works. I've seen this work for myself and for my peers and for countless others who ran out of options, and I'm hoping to make it accessible to the people who need it most. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for your tough testimony in the Hope Project. Thanks to them. Just a quick question, Australia, how long have they had?
That's very recent. I
Yeah.
can't rattle off the date, but
Yeah,
it's
just-
I think at the end of 2023.
Oh, okay.
Just working from memory.
Okay, great. Questions, anyone? I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Now we have Bob Notch, Veterans Advocate. Bob? How are you?
Chair Cassidy, members of the committee, thank you so much for the opportunity to testify today. I'm Bob Notch. I serve as the Veteran Advocate for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. It is the pleasure and responsibility of the Office of the Veteran Advocate, among many other things, to provide an independent look at the delivery of veterans' benefits and services from state executive agencies, and advise the public in this committee on how the Commonwealth may improve its services to and for veterans and their families. I'm happy to bring 27 years of military experience and 7 years of experience and collaboration in the military veterans service space to this role. I support Bill H4172, the HERO Act, and the companion bills S1750, H2627, and H2662 with similar language pertaining to the veterans buyback. These bills provide significant opportunities to increase services and benefits to veterans, as well as update antiquated language and references. I appreciate the hard work of the Healy Driscoll administration and the staff members who did the work to put these bills together. I want to bring special attention to the efforts to broaden the definition of veteran for Chapter 115 benefits. I strongly support this effort and provide additional proposals in my written testimony to bring services, benefits, and opportunities to more veterans and their families and align with VA eligibility. I believe these proposals complement the clarity, federal alignment, inclusivity, and intent of H4172. I ask that you act favorably on all these proposals. As I build out the Office of the Veteran Advocate, I intend to work closely with all of you and your staffs. I'm coordinating currently with you and your staff members to incorporate one-on-one meetings to be able to discuss individual issues for veterans within your constituency and their families. Thank you for your time today. I look forward to working with you all. Thank you for the work you do to support the military and veteran community here in Massachusetts.
Thank you very much for your service, and thank you and your families too. That's a big part of it too. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Captain Michael Stover. Captain.
Chairman Cassidy, honorable members of the Joint Committee on Veterans and Federal Affairs. Good afternoon. My name is Michael Stover. I'm a captain and retired officer of the United States Public Health Service, a veteran, a resident of Massachusetts, having lived in the town of Walpole since 2011. I served our nation for 30 years as a commissioned officer of the U.S. Public Health Service and retired in December 2022. My testimony today is in support of House Number 4172. I would like to express my appreciation to the Healy Driscoll administration and the Executive Office of Veterans Services for their commitment to inclusivity, enhanced benefits and opportunities, and expanding veteran services for all Commonwealth of Massachusetts veterans who proudly and honorably served our nation. This proposed legislation will benefit most Commonwealth veterans. However, as currently written, some Commonwealth veterans will actually be excluded from receiving all Massachusetts veteran benefits, since the proposed legislation broadens the definition of a veteran only under certain provisions of Chapter 115 and not elsewhere in Massachusetts general law. Therefore, the proposed legislation, as written, is limited to expanding veterans benefits to only those under Executive Office of Veterans Services programs. Failure to align the Commonwealth definition of veteran with the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs definition of veteran and to amend Massachusetts general law to reflect consistency will result in the exclusion of certain Commonwealth veterans who have honorably served in the U.S. Space Force, the U.S. Public Health Service Commission Corps, and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration Corps. To remedy this exclusion and to assure inclusivity for all honorably discharged veterans residing in the Commonwealth, the current definition of armed services, as contained in the definition of veteran in Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 4, Section 7, Clause 43, should be amended to include the U.S. Space Force, the U.S. Public Health Service Commission Corps, and the National Oceanic Administration and Atmospheric Administration Corps. By amending this proposed legislation in this way, the full suite of benefits for honorably discharged veterans listed in Massachusetts General Law, Chapters 4, 31, 59, 115, 115A, and 276A will align completely with the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs definition of veteran. And I'd like to mention that the financial impact to the Commonwealth would be minimal with these changes. Currently, there are 87 USPHS retirees, only 71 active duty USPHS officers, and 16 Public Health Service survivor annuitants in Massachusetts. In addition, there are only 7 NOAA retirees, 6 active duty officers, and 1 NOAA survivor annuitant in the Commonwealth. Lastly, I would like to mention that I have also proposed similar legislation filed last October as Senate Docket 2779, an act standardizing definition relative to veterans through Senator Michael Rush's office. And I think to end my testimony today, I think a fitting way to do that is to echo Chairman Vilas's words that a veteran is a veteran is a veteran. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony and your service. Appreciate it. Any questions?
Yeah. So, Cap, so you're saying the Oceanic, is that what you're saying, NOAA?
NOAA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration Corps, that's correct.
You're equating the agency to a military service.
Yeah, that's correct. If you look to the federal definition, it includes U.S. Public Health Service as well as NOAA Commission Corps as well as the Space Force.
Okay.
That's correct.
Thank you.
And I have more information here to share, which I'll do afterwards.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Jerry Pinsky from the Veterans Business Ownership Initiative. Alrighty, we will loop around. How about Amanda Braga Tipton? Welcome.
Chairman Vilas, Chairman Cassidy, and the members of the committee, thank you for the opportunities to submit testimony in support of the HERO Act. My name is Amanda Braga Tipton. Recently, I served on the Veterans Reintegration Advisory Committee under the directive of Dr. John Santiago, whom we heard of earlier. I served as a chaplain in the United States Army Reserves from 2018 until October 2023. So I was the one that soldiers would come to discussing adultery, rape, sexual harassment, guilt of the battlefield. Because war's not pretty, it's so ugly, there's nothing romantic about it at all. I cried with Gold Star families. An amazing privilege to be able to serve in that capacity to those who raise their right hand to protect and defend. I did this because about 8 years ago, I saw a number, and this number really bothered me. The number was 22. I was so naive so naive that 22 veterans a day at that time were dying by suicide. And so whether it was an insane idea or divine appointment, I thought, you know what, if I could impact just one soldier to reconsider taking their life, then that would impact their family, and that would impact their community, and then that would impact their state. It would impact, there's a domino effect. Hold on to that piece of information. So, fast forward to July 5th, 2023, at approximately 8:00 p.m., I received a phone call that no one ever wants to receive. My beautiful, beloved brother, Sergeant Joshua Tipton. Excuse me for being so blunt here, but there's no way to dance around this. He put a pistol to his heart and he pulled the trigger. He had just left therapy at the VA. I threw the phone. Pretty sure I blacked out. 13 days later, I stood at Bourne National Cemetery with a host of nearly 300 other people. And as taps began to play, I found myself rendering a salute to the most important person in my life as I stared at this box that held his remains and trying to process how are 30 years of life and of love and of memories right now held in that box that is about to go in 6 feet. How does any of this make sense? I was encouraged to urge this committee to support this bill, this act, but after hearing so many today, it seems like we're all on the same page. I'd like to read a quote I heard this morning. Winston Churchill. He was known for bolstering the spirits and determination of the British people during the darkest days of World War II. On October 31st, 1942, he was addressing in a conference of coal miners in Westminster Central Hall. And he said, "We shall not fail. And someday, when children ask, 'What did you do to win this inheritance for us and to make our name so respected among men?' one will say, 'I was a fighter pilot.' Another will say, 'I was in the submarine service.' Another will say, 'I marched with the 8th Army,' and the fourth will say, 'None of you could have lived without the convoys of the merchant seamen.' And in your turn, with equal pride and equal right, you will say, 'We cut the coal.'" I share that to say that every single person that is in this room, every single person right now that is actually walking the halls of this great home, the house of the people, has a part to play. Whether they're cutting the coal or whether they're the pilot of the fighter jet. There are those right now in the Commonwealth. There are Joshes out there right now in this moment who were thinking, who were believing a lie that life would be better without them. And so, yes, I urge you, please, would you consider passing this? But also, I remind you, I remind us, and I remind whoever's watching, that it's called Beacon Hill for a reason. It was purposely named. Why? Because the founders of this state believed that Massachusetts would be a city on a hill, that it would extend a light into darkness. So I remind us that we have a mission and we have a duty, that there are those right now in this Commonwealth who have worn a uniform, who are in the bowels of darkness, and the decisions that are made here can bring forth a bright light to reach them. So that those that are out there, maybe within here, will win the war they tell no one about. Thank you.
Ma'am, thank you very much for your moving testimony. So very sorry for your loss. Thank you for your service, and that was very compelling. Members of the committee, questions? Please.
Amanda is my friend. Amanda called me after she got the horrible news. So I know this committee understands, and I know you especially do. But she is so right. Like, we can't just keep talking about this. We are Beacon Hill. We are Massachusetts. But Amanda, nobody tells it like you. You were there when we lost Nick. And now your brother rests in the National Cemetery with Nick. You know, I wear the 22 kill ring, and I wear your brother's bracelet. So I don't know how you just did what you just did, but you do it a lot. And you touched a lot of lives today. And you're going to save a lot of lives. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Chow from Home Base. Welcome.
Chairman Velas, Chairman Cassidy, members of the committee, thank you for having me here today. My name is Dr. Louis Chow, and I'm here to testify in support of H4172, the HERO Act, on behalf of Home Base. Home Base was founded by the Red Sox Foundation and Mass General Hospital, and is the first and one of the largest nonprofits healing invisible wounds affecting service members, veterans, their families, and families of the fallen. I've been with Home Base for the last 11 years, and I currently am a member of the Massachusetts Veterans Home Council. We've heard today about the toll of invisible wounds in our communities. Home Base has been fortunate to work with Mass General, with MGB, with Harvard Medical School, to leverage the clinical resources so that every year we can serve 1,300 Massachusetts veterans and family members. We've been honored to work with several members of this committee to ensure that this work continues. What we know is that there are countless resources and nonprofits that are here ready to help serve our veterans. And there's this painful imagery that sometimes in this room, like one we're in today, on the one side we have those who need help and need support. On the other we have the services that are ready for them. But there's a wall. And the HERO Act has many provisions that helps open some of these points so that we can actually connect and provide those services. Of all these provisions, today I will focus on the expansion of the HERO Act, as well, on the Chapter 115, and as well as the creation of a working group on psychedelics. We know that there are about 285,000 veterans in Massachusetts, and estimates have that 1 in 3 come home with an invisible wound. If it's left unaddressed, we've heard today about the cost it has, not just on the individual, but on the family and on the community. What we know is that when these invisible wounds are not treated successfully, we've already lost 1,400 veterans in this state to suicide since 9/11. The need for mental health support and services is critical. The HERO Act and the reimbursement for outpatient behavioral health services is huge. It allows it to be treated as the same as medical and dental appointments. This is a game changer, and we're in support of breaking down those barriers. The HERO Act also creates a public-private working group to study the benefits of psychedelics for veterans who are suffering from disorders as a result of their service. We have powerful first-line treatments for PTSD, but they don't work for everyone. We heard today about the importance of psychedelics in other countries. We need to understand how, why, for whom it works, and what the adverse effects are. So we're delighted and applaud the governor and this committee in establishing a working group that will help us understand what are the insights, what are the guidelines that will help us continue to make advancements in this area. We're proud to support the HERO Act and thank the Healy administration and members of this committee for their unwavering support to help serve veterans in this Commonwealth and their families. I also have a letter of support to submit for the record, and I thank you for the opportunity to testify today.
Doctor, thank you very much. Home base has a long history of servicing a lot of veterans with the invisible wounds. So we owe you a debt. We appreciate your testimony here today. Questions?
I would just like to say thank you very much. We did take a tour of the home base and the phenomenal facilities, and I think we should all, everybody in the on the committee should take a tour.
We'd love to arrange that.
Thanks for your
Doctor, if I may, just what does the data tell us right now? And I ask this question with a certain amount of trepidation because I don't want it to, but what does the data tell us right now about the health benefits of psychedelics?
We heard earlier that there's been a lot of things that prevent us from studying it in a controlled fashion. So we have a lot of anecdotal reports that it can help with treatment-resistant depression as well as unmitigated PTSD that has not responded to existing treatments. What we have to do is to understand if in a controlled setting, if we have the right environment with the right protocol, who is it that's going to benefit most from this? Because we don't want people to wait and have this notion that there is nothing that works. So what we see is that for some conditions, like ruminations, where people keep thinking about something nonstop, this can provide a sense of release from it. We also know that the effects of this can be powerful above and beyond one dose of treatment, so it lasts far longer than most other medications. And that's why there's so much promise here and emphasis for our state and federally for us to be able to help support this.
It's helpful. Thank you very much. Any other questions? Thank you very much, Doctor.
Thank you.
Landon Mavrelis from the National Guard Association.
Chair Cassidy, Chair Vilas, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Landon Mavrelis. I'm the president of the National Guard Association of Massachusetts, or NAGAMA. We represent the 8,000 soldiers and airmen serving in the Massachusetts National Guard. NAGAMA is dedicated to advocating for the National Guard community on both Beacon Hill and Capitol Hill to ensure that our citizen soldiers and airmen have the proper resources and benefits to assist our communities and defend the nation. First, we would like to thank this committee in the legislature for the passage of the SPEED Act last session. Many of the policies in the SPEED Act were focused on military families, including the National Guard Family Education Program, which is allowing our Guard members to transfer their state education benefits to their dependents. This benefit has been extremely popular with our members and has been an excellent recruiting and retention tool for us, so thank you again. Secondly, we want to thank Governor Healy and her administration for filing the HERO Act with policies focused on expanding our veterans' benefits and services in the Commonwealth. NAGAMA enthusiastically supports the HERO Act. There are several policies in this legislation important to Guard members, including the updated definition of veteran within Chapter 115, and similar to Senate 2364 filed by Chair Vilas. The language in the HERO Act would also qualify retired Guard members for the soldiers' homes. Additionally, NAGAMA supports the increased access to the active duty buyback program. Hundreds of Guards members have civilian careers in public service throughout the Commonwealth, and these updates will ensure our veterans are aware of their buyback options and with ample time, as we've heard in a lot of the testimony today, to make informed decisions that are best for them and their families. Lastly, as the committee deliberates this legislation, NAGAMA asks that they consider including House 3514 and Senate 2313, filed by Rep. Kilcoyne and Senator Cronin, respectively. These are acts to establish the Guard Enlistment Enhancement Program in any omnibus legislation reported favorably for this committee. I have testified in the past on the recruiting challenges facing the DoD on the Guard specifically, and the bottom line is that the Guard and the Commonwealth need more tools at our disposal to ensure we can recruit enough men and women to meet our mission. We need more recruiters and more people talking about the Guard and the benefits we provide to our enlistees. The easiest, most cost-effective way to accomplish this is to mobilize, incentivize our greatest asset, which is our currently serving Guard members, to get involved in the recruiting process. In closing, NGAMA urges the committee to support the HERO Act and report it favorably for House and Senate action before the close of this legislative session. And I thank you today for the opportunity to testify, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Quick question for you. Are we seeing with, and if this isn't an answer you have the answer, a question you have the answer to right now, please feel free to follow up with us. The recruiting challenges that we're seeing nationally, are we also seeing that in the Mass National Guard?
Oh, 100%. That's if not, maybe our challenges might be greater, in the sense that we're competing for people's time. A lot of our, as you know, a lot of our soldiers and airmen are civilian or part-time soldiers and airmen. So yeah, that's absolutely reflected in the Guard. I'd say across the board, across the country.
Appreciate that. And just so you know, this committee is well aware that there are certain priorities of the Guard that are not listed right now, not currently part of this legislation, but just to let you know, we are well aware of them. Questions, members of the committee? Thank you very much for your time. Lisa McPhee from the American Legion of Massachusetts. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Chairman Vilas, Chairman Cassidy. My name is Lisa McPhee, and I'm representing the American Legion, Department of Massachusetts, the single largest veterans organization in the world. With that, the American Legion is a forerunner of legislation in this country, starting with the Flag Code, the GI Bill, the post-9/11 GI Bill, the Forever GI Bill, which allows the transfer of educational aid to the spouses and the kids of veterans. We're also on the forefront. If you look on my shirt, it says "Be the One." That's our attempt to end veteran suicide. Be the one person to stop somebody from committing suicide. We have to get through to our veterans that it's okay not to be okay. But I'm here to talk about the Department of Massachusetts, home of past National Commander Jake Comer, past National Commander Paul Morin, our current Department Commander Sandra Davis, and the 35,000 members of the American Legion family here in Massachusetts. We were asked in November to take a look at the HERO Act by the Executive Office of Veteran Services. So the American Legion doesn't just jump in, it digs. And we digged into this particular HERO Act. Everybody has been up here, doing the cheerleader thing. We found one little thing that we didn't like. So I was tasked as the department adjutant to go ahead and craft a letter to the governor. And I would like to read that letter. The American Legion Department of Massachusetts applauds your continuous support of all Massachusetts veterans. The recent HERO Act provides many needed services to the veterans of the Commonwealth. The American Legion Department of Massachusetts does have some concerns regarding the free veteran license plate initiative in the HERO Act. The monies collected from the Veterans License Plate Program are revenue streams for the Veterans Home in Chelsea and Holyoke. This would be a loss of $600,000 to Chelsea Soldiers Home and $400,000 to the Holyoke Soldiers Home. The American Legion Department of Mass is asking, what is the plan to replace these funds to our veterans' homes? The American Legion Department of Mass believes we can work together with this legislation and work with you to find a solution to replace the $1 million lost in veterans' benefits to the Holyoke and Chelsea Soldiers Home. So with that was what I was directed to do by our Department Executive Committee in November 18th of 2023. And January 13th, The Office of Executive Veteran Services met with our executive board in January. And this was the letter that we drafted afterwards. Good day, Madam Governor Healy. The American Legion, Department of Massachusetts would like to thank you for your presentation given to our leadership Saturday, January 13th via Zoom by the Executive Office of Veteran Services. Eric Maybird and Marvin Mathler from EOVS provided our leadership with important information regarding the reductions of funds from the Veterans License Plate Program and to the two soldiers' home, and how the plan was to replenish those funds. The American Legion remains steadfast in our concern about the reductions of funds from the RMV Veterans License Plate Program. During their presentation, it was stated that the operating budget of both veterans' homes were covered 100% with no reduction for the 2024 year. The American Legion, the Department of Massachusetts, is very grateful for the complete funding of the operation budgets of Chelsea and Holyoke. The issue remains concerning the license plate funds because the funds from the license plate program are used for recreation and they are used for personal need items. An example of this would be the most recent construction of the budget for Chelsea's Veteran Soldiers Home. There was a significant shortfall in the monies provided for the furnishing of the home. The Veterans License Plate Program funds supplemented the furnishings of the Chelsea Soldiers Home. The American Legion remains opposed to elimination of fees from the RMV License Plate Program until the Commonwealth of Massachusetts can provide a viable solution to the reduction of funds to the License Plate Program and to the homes of Chelsea and Holyoke. So the way this is built up is the Veterans Plate Program, it's a specialty plate. $60 goes to the RMV, the remaining $40 goes to the Soldiers Home. 60% to Chelsea, 40% to Holyoke. One of the things in the HERO Act is to eliminate the charge to veterans for veterans plates. Okay, so when we asked, what's the plan? That's the $1 million that you're talking about. The HERO Act goes and it covers and it expands this and expands this, but it's taken away on this side, and it needs to be addressed. How are they going to replace those funds? We were told, well, we always, the operating budget is 100% covered. Well, we're not talking about the operating budget. We're talking about recreation, and we're talking about personal needs. When you have people that are stuck in soldiers' homes or living in soldiers' homes, they need dignity. And the recreation programs and the personal need programs provide that dignity to them. So all we're asking, if you want to do free license plates, rock on. Take it from the $60 that you're still going to get to the RMV and then divide it between the two soldiers' homes. There's got to be some other way. You can't be out here beating your chest about, you know, the HERO Act when you're taking from this side and not realizing we haven't replenished it. So that is my testimony, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Just a comment. Well aware of the concern you raised about the license plates. Heard about it. I can assure you we will continue to have those conversations with the secretary and his team, and we are aware of them. This committee is aware of those concerns that have been for some time, and I can assure you it will be part of a dialogue. Questions, members of the committee?
Yes, I really appreciate it. I'm sitting here thinking, you know, the one opposition on the sheet, you know.
And
I'm
the
like,
single largest
what are they?
organization
Right?
in the
I'm
world.
telling you that you raise a huge point, because, again, if you're living in a soldier home, that recreational capacity is huge. I mean, you know, that's what you live for. I mean, and being a part of the Legion out, and we go to the Holyoke there to do different events with them, you know, and so it's a big thing. So I'm glad you raised that, and I'm glad the chairman said it's something that we need to definitely continue to look at.
Because with the Chelsea Soldiers Home, when it fell short on funds for furnishings, we're talking about mattresses, we're talking about clocks on the wall in their rooms, we're talking whiteboards, not even the really recreation. That's just stuff to get them up and running. So that's, you know, we have to make sure that if those funds are going to be depleted or not depleted, but, you know, reduced, we need to find a way and an avenue to go ahead and get those funds back.
If I may, Chair. I can tell you one thing, Chair Velas will fix this. Oh, yes.
Is he going to do that for junior law cadet, too?
He believes, and we all do. But yes, I was struck when I met you, saw you on Sunday. How could the American Legion be against the HERO Act?
Correct. It isn't that we're against it. It's
No.
just a little part.
Yeah, you're pointing out something that probably wasn't thought of. But I'm sure we'll figure it out, because veterans, I'm involved with that world a lot, and donating and raising money, and people. I have some old coats that I can give to the veterans. We don't give old things to veterans.
No.
They should get brand new, the best that we have. And what you're talking about is those things that maybe weren't accounted for or planned on as part of a new building or taking
Exactly.
care of somebody. And
Exactly.
we have to fill that gap,
Yeah.
and it shouldn't be hand-me-downs.
Right.
So I give you credit for coming and waiting and testifying and maybe enlightening others that this is something we have to address as part of this fantastic bill.
Yes.
When I first got elected state representative, either the first or top 3 bills that I filed was getting rid of
Yes.
the license plate. I said, what are we doing charging our veterans?
Right. And I get that. But if you really want to make it free, that $60 that the RMV is going to get, you can just disperse it to the
And I was
soldiers' homes.
quickly advised of where those funds go. So, again, we are well aware of this. The administration has been incredibly forthcoming in their willingness to engage, to have dialogue, and this is a bill that we're going to spend a lot of time talking about from A to Z, the entire thing. So, and they know that, and they welcome it.
Yes, they do, because they've called my office after we delivered these letters, and we've had a dialogue. And they've reached out to us by doing this Zoom meeting during our executive board meeting in January. So
They've been more than willing to collaborate on all facets of this. So needless to say, we will continue this dialogue. And we thank you for coming forward. Bye-bye. All right. Lynette Renee Gabrilla from the Wachusett Veteran Services District. Soldiers on. Welcome.
Thank you, Senator Velas. Thank you to the committee. My name is Bruce Buckley. I'm the CEO of Soldier On, and if you don't know, I know Senator Velas knows us, but Soldier On works with veterans who are homeless and at risk of homelessness in a variety of ways. We're based sort of in western Massachusetts is where I live, but we do now a lot of work in the eastern part of the state and more coming. And we work with veterans who are homeless in transitional housing. We work with veterans who are homeless in permanent housing, or formerly homeless veterans who are in our permanent housing. And we have a program called SSVF, which is Supportive Services for Veterans and Families, which is an outreach program. So we touch a lot of homeless veterans, and I think one of the many services that we offer is, as someone mentioned earlier, the bureaucracy of knowing what's available to each veteran is a challenge. And because that's what we do, we attach a lot of these programs together, whether they're the VA, whether they're the state, whether it's a private nonprofit, and on, of how we really have figured out a way, hopefully, to meet all the needs of the veterans. And Chapter 115 has always been a big part of how we can have a veteran go from transitional housing to permanent housing. Our history in permanent housing is a 94% success rate. We either have built or we also serve over 400 units in Massachusetts of permanent housing. And when I say success, I'll qualify it as they stay with us to the end of their life. They still live with us today. They've gone on to a different life, but we know that it's a successful one. Many work for us full-time and have moved on. So what I want to just point out quickly here today is a couple of points where this really is an effective bill that we fully support. Right, last night we had 99 veterans in our transitional housing. 17 of those veterans were eligible for VA veteran status, but not for Chapter 115 as it stands today. Those veterans need, that's 17 out of, let's say it's 17%. That's how we can help someone get into permanent housing. Because if you have little or no income, that's the tool that we use to make it work. And we've been doing it for years, and there's always been this exclusion. So Chapter 115 in the HERO Act now expands it to the veterans that we see and we serve, and it really does include them in permanent housing, and it gives them, whether it's with us or in the community, a real way to permanent success that they qualify now as the veteran status. A couple other pieces, the mental health is also a big piece of what we're available to offer now, and many of the veterans, and if you read the testimony, the last page of 3 talks about 2 real veterans, one of whom has Chapter 150, or has availability of mental health services. The other one in another one of our buildings doesn't, and because of that, they are unable to get the mental health, and you can read the description of how their lives are vastly different. So this should include those individuals, and then quickly, you know, one great way to stop homelessness is to prevent it as opposed to treat it and intervene like we do. The property tax exemption doubling is a big piece, because we're seeing more and more older veterans who end up in our program because they just can't afford to live anymore. So I'll stop at that, and thank you again.
Mr. Buckley, thank you for testifying. Just to be clear, and I think you answered it, I just want to make sure I got it. What would increase your ability to serve more veterans? Sorry, it's the changing of the definition of a veteran that would make more eligible for your services.
Correct.
Thank you.
And, you know, the services that support, they're now eligible for these support systems. So, yes, it makes them successful in our program.
Okay. Questions from the committee? Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you.
Kenneth Walsh from the VFW. Virtually.
Hello, did you say Kenneth Walsh?
Yes, please, welcome.
Oh, thank you, Senator Vilas, Senator Cassidy, and honorable members of the committee. My name is Kenneth Walsh. I retired from the U.S. Air Force back in 1995. Almost immediately, I've been very active with the Veterans of Foreign Wars afterwards. I've worked a lot on the streets with homeless veterans, with veterans at risk. We just heard the gentleman speak about elderly veterans losing their homes. And it's a little bit worse than that when we talk about doubling the property tax exemption for them, or giving them an increased disability annuity. Recently just came out that 2/3 of our senior citizens are living paycheck to paycheck, and including veterans out there. And this bill, House 4172, is a really good step to helping our veterans. When it comes to veterans on the streets, as already been mentioned, Chapter 115, doing away with the 3-year wait, reducing it to 1 day is going to be really wonderful in getting more of our veterans off the streets. Even after they're housed, one thing we find, personally working with them on the side, is the medical and dental benefits, which they all have difficulty, the ones that I see, getting. And it's really wonderful that that's in there in the bill. Along with that, I have coffee hours in different towns for the veterans, different towns on a monthly basis. One recently in Hull, we had about 65 veterans, and I brought up many of these issues. And like I said, out of 65 people there, for example, 48 of them, I believe, were affected by the expanded motor vehicle benefits. Many were affected by the benefits for, property tax exemptions for elderly veterans, 100% disabled. The enthusiasm amongst the veterans I've talked with is out there, and they're really 100% behind all these new proposals in this House bill. I want to say personally myself, just let people know I've heard some of, for example, the Gold Star mother whose son died after he had come back. He had PTSD. I want to let you know I can relate to that. I see it not only on the streets all the time. I've been treated for military PTSD for 30 years now. It's extremely difficult. I'd say to anybody out there, my name's Ken Walsh from Hull. I'm with the Hingham Hull VFW post. Anybody wants to contact me and I'll see what I can do to help you if you cannot find the resources available. Our organization as a whole, we're there for the veterans. We appreciate this bill, and we appreciate Governor Healy and Secretary Santiago's leadership on this bill. And we do hope that you can find it to approve this and hopefully get it out there immediately. I'd like to know if there are any questions at this time, sir.
Questions from the committee? Mr. Walsh, thank you, and thank you for what the VFW does. We appreciate it greatly. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator.
You are very welcome. Mr. Richard Gormley, Commander, West Roxbury VFW Post 2902. Welcome.
Thank you. Okay, so the name of the bill is the HERO Bill. And I appreciate the governor for taking her busy time to come here physically to testify with Commissioner Santiago, both here, first ones to talk in favor of it. But they should name this bill after this man's son, Senator Zares. He's a real hero. And he knows what this is all about. And I'm also been a disabled veteran for years. I've been a combat veteran since 1968. I run the VFW, West Roxbury, and all my members are all for this bill, and I'm online being in favor of the bill. And I hope Senator Brady down the end votes for it. And I know Pat O'Connor was here, as my Senator Rush was here physically, and I just hope you approve the bill. Thank you very much.
And you're still Lord Mayor of West Roxbury?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Tommy Kennedy and I were in Ireland with you.
That's right, he came to my house. He almost fell over in his wheelchair.
Questions, members of the committee?
Chair, just a thank you. Thank you for...
Well, your son was a real hero.
Yes, sir. United States Marine.
That's correct.
Corporal.
That's correct.
2nd Battalion, 8th Marines. Killed in combat, July
He outranked me.
23rd.
I was only a Lance Corporal.
So thank you for your kind words and your service. Semper
Okay,
Fi,
Senator.
Marine. Thank you, Chair.
Of course. Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, guys.
James Seymour, Cape and Islands Veterans Outreach Center.
Thanks, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is
afternoon.
Jim Seymour. I'm the Executive Director of the Cape and Islands Veterans Outreach Center. And for 40 years, our organization has been serving veterans in need on the Cape and Islands. Today, currently 19,000 veterans call the Cape and Islands home. And we're very thankful to Governor Healy and Secretary John Santiago for spearheading this legislation. Our organization does a few things in service of veterans. We work to eliminate the gateways to homelessness with affordable housing and transitional housing. We run 14 food pantries across the Cape and Islands. And we recently, within the last year, began providing transportation for veterans to critical medical appointments for rides that are not VA eligible. The reality is, like my colleague Bruce Buckley mentioned a few minutes ago from Soldier On, most of our clients face hard choices each day between food, medicine, and housing. And as they age, those resources, those financial resources, become more challenging to make ends meet, and they become gateways to homelessness. This act does a few things that I think are very important for us to acknowledge. It provides relief to some of our most vulnerable with the property tax vacating and the additional funding that is contained within there. But I think the other thing that is very challenging for folks like us that sit in the sphere on the front lines is there's this misalignment between fed and state benefits. Particularly if you're receiving certain types of benefits, you become ineligible potentially in many cases for Chapter 115. And I think the focus on outpatient visits and the reality of those being provided from resources are very important. Our most challenged and vulnerable veterans who face these challenges that we encounter many times are financially and fiscally on the lower end of the food chain, so to speak, and these things become challenges for them to stay in contact with their providers because of co-pays and so forth and so on. It's really important that our organization, like many others today, support wholeheartedly this first chapter, which we hope is one of many, to continue to look at the reality that our veterans face and respond appropriately with the right resources, the right programs. And these 17 initiatives start that conversation and begin to move that needle in the right direction. I applaud this committee for your sitting in today for these almost 3.5 hours at this point. It's commendable work that you do, and we are very, very happy to support the HERO Act bill on behalf of the veterans we serve here on the Cape and Islands. Thank you.
Sir, thank you very much. Questions from the committee? Thank you very much for taking the time and sticking around to testify. Have a great day, sir. David Paul, Legal Services Center of Harvard Law. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Chairman and committee. My name is David Paul, and I'm a student at Harvard Law School. At Harvard Law School, I've had the immense privilege of representing Massachusetts veterans through the school's Legal Services Center. And I was grateful to have the opportunity to testify before this committee back in November when I shared with you all the experiences of a Massachusetts veteran named Michael, who also testified that day by Zoom. Michael had served honorably overseas in the 1970s, but had been dealing with some very serious health and personal issues more recently. He had radiation treatment for cancer that he was undergoing, and he lost his apartment when the building he lived in was deemed uninhabitable. And Chapter 115 benefits were Michael's lifeline during that time, until, unfortunately, they were abruptly shut off by his locality for reasons that were never fully explained. Michael wound up appealing that termination to EOVS, and he prevailed. He won on appeal, but the entire back and forth lasted more than a year, and during that time, Michael received no veterans benefits and saw his health and his living situation continue to deteriorate. Now, I'm resharing parts of Michael's story with you here today because I think it highlights several important considerations as you embark on this exceptionally important task of reforming and improving Chapter 115. Firstly, it highlights the absolutely essential role that Chapter 115 benefits can play in the lives of veterans, how these benefits can literally mean the difference between being able to pay a month's rent or having to make it through not knowing if you'll still have a place to sleep a couple days from now. But Michael's story also highlights the urgent need for reform. And the governor's bill, which is excellent, addresses several of the key areas. But I would like to draw the committee's attention to the specific question of benefits pending appeal. As the system currently stands, veterans like Michael can be cut off abruptly and are shut out until their appeal is adjudicated. And Senate Bill 2489 specifically addresses this issue, and I would encourage you to consider including the proposed language in that bill as to this specific question. And finally, Michael's story highlights the importance also of timely processing of claims and appeals. And so in addition to the governor's excellent modernization initiatives that are before you already, I would urge you again, consider adopting a system of deadlines like the one we have in Senate Bill 2489. Such a system would guarantee veterans like Michael a fair hearing in a reasonable amount of time so that no veteran is left high and dry for months on end, like he unfortunately was. So in conclusion, thank you again. It's a long hearing, and I would really appreciate you giving us the chance to speak to you on this important push to reform this essential program, as you all know. Thank you.
David, that deadline, that's in this bill or is not in this bill?
That is not in this bill.
What
but
you
there's-
testified about in November, that's what you were there for.
Yeah, exactly.
So thank you for your continuing to come back to us and what you do at the legal clinic.
Thank you.
Impressive stuff. Thank you very much. Hey, got questions?
Well, sir.
Thank you
Have a
for your
good day.
time.
All righty, next up we have Vasundhara Mukherjee. And I'm pretty sure I didn't get that right.
Hi. Good afternoon. My name is Vasundhara Mukherjee, and thank you for the opportunity to testify today. Like David, I'm a student at Harvard Law School, where I've had the privilege of serving Massachusetts veterans as a student attorney in the Veterans Law Clinic. For the past several months, I have been representing an elder veteran, whom I'll call John, in an ongoing Chapter 115 benefits appeal. Like so many of the state's veterans, John lives by himself and relies on Chapter 115 benefits for his daily expenses, including food, rent, medical bills, and health insurance. Yet, over the past several years, he's undergone a number of administrative hurdles that have continuously delayed and disrupted his access to benefits. A few years ago, John's benefits were abruptly terminated without proper notice, and this began a chain reaction of challenges for him to re-access the benefits. For example, for a period of time, John's town had no VSO in place, and by the time a new VSO came into office, his file had virtually gone off of the radar. For over a year, he received no Chapter 115 benefits, communication, or outreach from the VSO, despite maintaining a need for support. When the new VSO ultimately contacted John, his information about John's benefits contradicted what prior VSOs had told John. Yet again, nothing about his circumstances had changed. Ultimately, John filed an appeal with EOVS to challenge his termination of his benefits as well as the administrative challenges. And after months of the appeal process, EOVS ruled in his favor and ordered the VSO to pay him over 2 years of retroactive benefits. But this remedy for the past hasn't fixed John's challenges currently with benefits delivery. John is homebound, and the inconsistent and often inaccessible delivery of his benefits is harrowing. His experiences highlight the urgent need to modernize Chapter 115 benefits and bring it on par with other programs, for example, ones that use direct deposit for benefits delivery. His experiences underscore the administrative complexity and unpredictability of the local Chapter 115 administration. And they underscore the importance of elevating veterans' dignity and unique needs when administering this program. Today's proposed legislation takes important steps to modernize the Chapter 115 benefits program, but we urge this committee to include even further reform to standardize and improve the administration of the program at the local level, including by creating, for example, procedural safeguards to ensure timely and accessible benefits delivery in a way that recognizes the dignity and needs of unique veterans. Thank you for the opportunity.
No, we thank you. Questions from the committee? Seeing none, do we also have Nathan Lowry from the Legal Services Center at Harvard Law School?
Yes, I'm
Virtually.
appearing remotely.
Okay, welcome.
Yes. Thanks so much for having me today and for the opportunity to testify. So my name's Nathan. I'm a Marine Corps veteran who served with 8th Marines in Helmand Province in Afghanistan, and I'm also a 303 student attorney. So I've had the privilege of representing Ryan, who I actually spoke about last November, who's an Army veteran from Massachusetts, for over a year now and has struggled to acquire Chapter 115 benefits. He served in intense combat at Camp Anaconda in Balata Rock, and he endured horrific trauma as a result. And like so many veterans, he does battle both TBI and PTSD from those experiences. Ryan relies on the Chapter 115 program like other veterans in times of need, but the statutes and regulations are dated, as we've spoken about, and are often under-inclusive. So what I'd focus on is specifically the outdated definition of the veteran, which certainly Governor Healey's bill helps to remediate, but not completely. So as you know, the current Chapter 115 program presumptively excludes veterans who have received less than honorable discharges, and that's regardless of mitigating circumstances like PTSD, TBI, and misconduct that results from those conditions. So those veterans who really need the benefits the most are the ones who are being denied these critical benefits. And as we've discussed, based on the HERO Act, the federal VA level and in other states, there's the opportunity to present that mitigating evidence and show previous meritorious service. And that's what the VA has already done in Ryan's case. So Ryan is a veteran under federal law. But because Chapter 115 hasn't been updated, he's actually ineligible still at the Massachusetts level. So again, like to applaud the HERO Act for bringing us up to date in terms of looking towards that federal eligibility and therefore granting state eligibility as a result. But we also need to look at Ryan's most recent terms of enlistment as well as previous terms of enlistment. He had already been discharged honorably in the past in the National Guard. And there's many veterans who've served for decades who had previous honorable discharges, and it's just that last discharge that is rendering them ineligible at times. And then just to conclude, I'd also like to point out to the committee other acts here that we've discussed in the past, an act relative to modernizing Chapter 115, House Bill 4152 and Senate Bill 2489. We believe that that legislation is more expansive and builds upon what's already been set forth in the HERO Act in terms of the opportunity to provide mitigating circumstances in previous meritorious service. So again, thanks very much for your time and for the opportunity to testify.
Nathan, thank you very much. So thank you to everyone. I would definitely like to follow up with those who have been here today testifying on the updated Chapter 115. So I'd strongly encourage you to loop around with me to follow up, to have another conversation on this. I guess my question is the nature of the discharge. And I guess I'm throwing this out to any of you all. Are we talking about scenarios where the whatever led to that other than honorable, or whatever it was, whatever the bad paper was, we'll say, are we talking about kind of a straight line between whatever happened to them that's causing, say, the post-traumatic stress, and then what led the behavior that led to the discharge, the bad paper discharge, whatever it may be? Or are we talking about really any incidents of something that led to a discharge for other than honorable conditions? And is my question clear?
It is. And so our thought is the former, that there is a causal relationship. At the federal level, both the CURTA memorandum and other federal memorandum are used to draw that causal connection between circumstances that led to discharge and the PTSD, TBI, or other condition that occurred. So we would look for that connection.
May I just say,
Please.
Senator, in other contexts, there's some ongoing legislation on this. For example, the Welcome Home Bonus, which is administered through the Department of Treasury. There's actually, the courts have ruled that the language suggests that benefits are tied to honorable courses of duty regardless of the final discharge status. So there is, I think, a precedent, not maybe in the context of Chapter 115, but there is a precedent for looking at, in a case of multiple honorable tours of duty, looking at that separately from whatever happened at the end as well.
All right, I appreciate all of your testimony today. Questions from the committee? Thank you very much, all of you. Moving on. Richard Smith. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being patient.
Thank you. Thanks for being here for almost 4 hours. Thank you. Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Rick Smith, and I'm a member of the Governor's Advisory Council on Veterans Services. I'm also a combat veteran, having served in the United States Marine Corps in both Operations Enduring Freedom and Iraqi Freedom. I'm strongly in support of the HERO Act, and I commend Governor Healy, Secretary Santiago, and everyone across the state who has worked to advance this bill. This bill provides a needed expansion of benefits that the Commonwealth provides to its benefits, including its commitment to expanding access to behavioral health services. Nearly 1 in 5 Americans is afflicted by mental illness. Veterans are particularly susceptible to the scourge of depression, anxiety, PTSD, and other afflictions due to the stressors of their work while in the military. The sacrifices veterans make can leave them with behavioral health challenges years after they have left the service. Mental health challenges can be a silent injury where no one sees it except those closest to them, and even then, they can go unseen. Veterans often avoid seeking treatment due to perceived stigmas and challenges seeking help, including affordability. According to the Cohen's Veterans Network and the National Council of Mental Well-Being, 42% of Americans see cost and poor insurance coverage as the biggest barriers for mental health care access. And 25% of Americans reported having to choose between getting treatment and paying for daily necessities. We all know someone suffering from mental illness. You're listening to someone with one right now. After returning from a year-long combat tour to Iraq, I was diagnosed with PTSD, and 15 years later, I'm still living with an anxiety disorder that has made parts of daily life challenging. I consider myself fortunate, however, with having many people and resources that I've used to tackle my challenges. But being fortunate should not be what determines outcomes. All veterans should get the care they deserve, and a checkbook should never be the deciding factor between care and no care. This bill provides financial feasibility for behavioral health care services for our veterans. We owe this level of care to our veterans. We owe this to their families, we owe this to our country, and we owe this to ourselves. I ask you today to please vote in the affirmative to favorably move this bill forward, because if there is one more dime that we can spend towards mental health services, then we shouldn't spare ourselves so much as a penny. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your courage and your testimony about your personal experience and your lived experience. Thank you. Questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much. And again, thank you for being here and having the patience to stick around. Have a great day. Miranda Mall from the Delaware Office of Veteran Services.
That's me. Yeah, Delaware. So
Welcome.
I appreciate the opportunity to speak with the committee, especially given that I'm not one of your constituents. I will tell you that as a director, I am watching this bill very closely. I can't speak for all of the states. I don't know them all. But it's aspiring for us here to look at some of the verbiage. But I am here actually in a private capacity as a veteran and an advocate at the state and national level for infertility coverage. There's a very small part of this bill that talks about infertility coverage for a handful of couples, and it sounds like it might be minimal equity that you're giving, but I wanted to talk a little bit about how obnoxiously common infertility can be, especially for veterans, because my legislators did not understand very well. And I don't know that that's the case for you all, but that's the experience I had here with my people. So service-connected infertility sounds like it would be something related to a physical injury. Often, though, it's related to something more hormonal or something that has degraded the quality of sperm or eggs, which is not in short supply in military service. When we talk about toxic exposures, when we talk about multiple combat tours or folks who fly on planes often, they're exposed to radiation often. But also, about 1 in 10 women at least have endometriosis or polycystic ovary syndrome, which is a barrier to service. Once you've been just diagnosed with it and you have chronic pelvic pain in the service, you are automatically recommended for separation or retirement, depending on the condition, which would make you a service-connected individual, probably in need of this kind of coverage. So there's bound to be more people affected than you think there might be. 1 in 8 couples in the US is estimated to have fertility troubles. The World Health Organization actually estimates it more like 1 in 6 if we go worldwide. Like, infertility is common. There are going to be couples that really need this assistance if you're talking about equity in your state. And it's kind of awe-inspiring to look at the opportunity that we have here, or that you have here, because I'm not a we, to make a difference for some of these couples. And that's it. I appreciate your time.
Oh, we greatly appreciate your time zooming in from Delaware. Thank you so very much. It's meaningful, and I really appreciate you sticking around for all those hours. Again, it's meaningful. Thank you very much for your insight and taking the time. Questions? Again, thank you very much. Richard Smith? Ralph Mitchell? Please. You take your time. Sir, just first and foremost, thank you so very much. It's been a long hearing. Thank you for...
I know. I appreciate you people for staying too.
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Chairman, my name is Ralph Mitchell, Lieutenant Colonel, U.S. Army, retired. I know what it's like to be in a Gold Star family because I grew up in one. I lost my dad when I was only 8 years old. He was killed in Vietnam. And my mom used to say that she was a single working mother before it really became fashionable. But anyway, in spite of her not wanting me to go in the military, I did 30 years between full-time active duty, Army National Guard, and Army Reserve. And it's like they were talking about military intelligence. That was one of my MOSs when I was in the uniform. But the one thing I noticed, though, studying at the time, this is during the Cold War, having to learn about the Soviet military. The one thing I admired about them was when a member of the Soviet military, no matter what service component, Army, Navy, Air Force, whatever, when they got out, if they had an honorable discharge, their version of it, they would report to whatever province or state they wanted to live in, and there was an office that would find them a place to live and get them a gainful employment. And it would be at a pay scale no less than what they had earned when they were in uniform. And I look at America, the only time we've ever had anything like that was the demographics were convicted felons trying to get on parole. Our military people, the only thing they'd get is a one-way ticket home and they're on their own. If they didn't have a good support network, what would happen? They'd end up with no way to maintain daily living. They're going to end up homeless, or they're going to end up in jail. But the one thing that caught my eye on this HEROES Act was that incentive for employers to give a chance to military people, returning veterans. Because out of my 30 years, I out-processed from active duty twice. The first time I was 27, and I spent a year and a half unemployed, not because I wasn't looking, because nobody would hire me. If they saw U.S. Army on my resume, that was a kiss of death. And so it didn't dawn on me, that was the reason I was still out of work all that time. So I redid my resume, painfully had to fold the flag of my military service that I was proud of. At the time I had been a captain, I was highly decorated, but if I wanted to stay an unemployed captain out there, I had to forget about all that and say I was just the average guy. I had these little rinky-dink jobs, which I lied about, just to get my foot in the door and to get off the unemployment roster. But I think, though, that little bit of incentive for employers to take a chance and hire a veteran, that's going to be worth its weight. Because you take somebody that's unemployed, the savings are run out, how are they going to maintain daily living? They can't pay their rent, they can't pay their bills, they can't buy groceries. All they got are excuses. That doesn't get it. So I think just that one little incentive is going to be enough to help some people. If it saves the life of one person, I think it's worth it. And that's all I have to say. I thank you for your time and giving me the opportunity to come here. This is the first time I ever knew we had so many veterans organizations available in this state.
Sir, thank you very much. Thank you for your service. Sorry for your loss, being a Gold Star family, and just really appreciate you taking the time to testify today.
I never knew there were all these different veteran organizations here. I learn something new every day.
Well, we appreciate that. We appreciate that, sir. Thank you so much. Any questions? Thank you very much, sir. Have a great day.
Okay.
Mary Death to it, virtually.
Yes, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you, Chairman Vilas and Chairman Cassidy and all of the members. some of my veteran colleagues on there, Senator Rush. It's a pleasure. My name is Mary Tuitt. Was in that building for quite many years. I'm a United States Navy veteran. I commander of my American Legion post. I serve on a variety of other different things here in the Commonwealth. I'm here to talk about H 4172. There's many things in this bill that I want to say thank you to the governor and the secretary of EOVS for, that it's going to be impactful in honoring those of us that have served, that have given and given some all to our country. But I want to ask the committee, the honorable committee, to look at line 149. I'm asking for an amendment. In this bill, the governor and EOVS offer the veterans, the female veterans, a decal. We've been advocating for many years for a distinctive female veteran license plate. We earn it, we worth it. We're not invisible. We're not invisible. We have worked very hard to come out of the shadows, and I think giving us a distinctive license plate, we've earned that. I have veteran plates on my car, and when I drive down the street and I park and I get out the car, people say, tell your husband thank you for his service. If my plate said female veteran, they would thank me for my service, because I did 14 years as a United States Navy jet mechanic. So I ask the committee honorably, please, amend the line 149 to say distinctive license plate. She probably served, female veteran, whatever you want to put it in there. But that's what I asked. I've talked to a lot of my female sisters out there. We're going to send in the written with all of our signatures asking for this. We previously had bills filed by State Representative Gloria Fox back in about 2013 that didn't make it all the way, but we're asking you please amend that section. I also support my American Legion colleagues around the funding that the license plates give to the different veterans' homes. If we think of how we can find that money back for that, you know, but I definitely want to say thank you so much. Thank you for allowing me to testify at the end of the day, and I know you guys want to go home and take care of things, so I want to say favorable on H 4172, but with amendments. Thank you so much, especially for the female license plate.
Man, thank you so much, and thank you for sticking around for all these hours to have your voice heard. It's very meaningful and impactful. We hear you loud and clear, and rest assured we will take a very good look at it. Questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you so much, ma'am. Have a great night. John Lee Diaz. Alrighty. How about Dana Sanders? Jerry Pinsky. Lynette Gabriela. Anyone else we missed here in person or remote? You can start right now. At this point in time, I'm going to move to adjourn. Thank you.